Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku joined the league? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Can I come with you? The fingers around his throat loosen slightly. The figure beside him turns to face him, suspicion and confusion and curiosity warring on his scarred face. What? His scratchy voice is flat, his fingernails ghosting over his scarred neck. Izuku pauses, trying to work up the courage to talk again. The feeling of being suffocated had become noticeable after the battle trial and had only grown as the semester progressed. Questions weighed heavily down on him, knowledge he didn't want filling up his mind. The pity in Uraraka's eyes when the quirkless were mentioned. Ida's speech on protecting the defenseless. The rest of the class's dismissal of their existence. And Bakugo had made his opinion on quirkless people crystal clear the past 10 years. He couldn't quite work up the courage to ask his teachers. They are pro-heroes, sure, but they are also teachers. Teachers don't care. He could practically feel Aizawa's eyes on him, the nickname, problem child, stinging every time it passed from his lips. If he didn't have one for all, would he even be here? The answer is no. It was clear when he faced All Might's overwhelming force in the final exams. His stomach still twinges in pain from where he was impaled. It's a new kind of pain, one that he takes in stride. He has to. Just like the ache of his jaw. Bakugo never liked teamwork. Relying on others makes you weak. Relying on a weak Deku? Out of the question. Except he's not weak. One for all rushes through his veins, and All Might's legacy rests on his shoulders, turning his hunched walk into a desperate crawl to some unknown finish line. He may have All Might's legacy, but his past experiences have not been erased by his new, overwhelming power. He wants to save people. All Might's power will let him save far more than he could on his own, but is it worth it? Over a century of accumulating power shoved into the body of a quirkless teenager who refuses to forget. His hands ache. I don't need to breathe. Home isn't an option. Mom doesn't need any extra burdens. Between his injuries and the villain attacks, she's already been considering transferring him to another school. Any more potential fatal situations and UA will be right out, and then All Might will be disappointed. UA is his alma mater, after all. Shigaraki watches him, eyes glittering the same shade of red as Bakugo's. The blonde could never achieve this level of jaded anger, though. It doesn't need to be long. Just not take me with you. Please. The words feel heavy as they leave his mouth, and the rest of the noise of the mall seems to fade into the background as Shigaraki studies him. After a moment he stands, bringing Izuku up with him. Come on, brat. You fought the hero killer, right? Tell me about him. There's a cafe over there. Shigaraki jerks his head towards a relatively calm building. Izuku's shoulders slump. Shigaraki was thinking about it, then, hands still around Izuku's neck, they enter the cafe. A short wait later, they're in front of a cashier who stares at the hand on Izuku's neck nervously. Cherry soda. Shigaraki looks at him. I need to order. Black tea with milk, please. He says, watching the cashier fidget with the tablet nervously as they watch them. Sir, are you okay? Shigaraki stiffens, looking over at Izuku, who plasters a sheepish smile on his face. I'm fine, it's just part of his quirk. How much? Both parties relax and the tab is paid for by Izuku. They retreat to a table in the corner quickly, avoiding questioning gazes by sitting side by side. Shigaraki seems unused to the contact, but his expression remains neutral as he watches Izuku pull a pen out of nowhere and starts doodling on a napkin. You wanted to know about the hero killer? Izuku asks, relieved to be hidden from the questioning looks. The villain nods, looking annoyed. I've been getting a lot of NPCs coming in and thinking we were working together, and Kurojiiri won't let me dust them. Apparently, they're good party members for the future. But you weren't working with Stain. I thought so. A wilted flower comes to life on the napkin. Really? Yeah. He has a single-minded goal and your goal is pretty abstract. Plus, he's an All Might fanboy at his core. No way you'd get along. Izuku stated matter-of-factly. Shigaraki nods along, surprised by how perceptive the hero brat is. In the end, Stain was a stubborn NPC who refused to listen to Shigaraki. He has no use for uncooperative party members. You're pretty smart. Do you know why they were more focused on Stain than me then? Shigaraki asks, watching the student's scarred hand lightly sketch out a burning candle. Izuku thinks over it for a moment, pausing his drawing to tap the pen against the table. Well, here are your drinks. Enjoy. The server chirps, then walks off brusquely, leaving the two occupants of the table to awkwardly reach for their drinks at the same time. I think you might not have made your goals clear enough at the USJ. Most of us were too distracted to hear anything other than kill All Might. From what I've seen, you want hero society as a whole to fall. Izuku grabs his drink as Shigaraki attempts to open his can with one hand while not disintegrating it. Absent-mindedly, he takes the can from Shigaraki and opens it, then slides it back across the table. I didn't need your help. No, you didn't. The green-haired boy agrees, sipping his drink. The suffocating feeling is starting to ease up, leaving an odd lightness in his chest. They sit in silence for a long minute, both enjoying their respective drinks. So, why exactly are you asking me to kidnap you? Is being a hero not all it's cracked up to be? And there it is. Izuku isn't really sure how to explain the suffocating feeling, just that it presses down on him, a constant presence in his daily life. He can pin the exact day it started, but spilling All Might's secrets is off of the table. The man has been nothing but kind. This is Izuku's burden. Almost a year ago, I made a deal with someone. Izuku finally says, finishing a tree that covers nearly half of his drawing space. A successor. Someone who can become an even better symbol than I ever was. The villain watches him, eyes tracking every movement and the distant look in the student's eyes. I thought it was a good idea at the time. Now I think I've bitten off more than I can chew. The green-haired boy chuckles humorlessly, taking a sip of his tea. Shigaraki watches him, noting the tension in his shoulders. He takes another sip of his soda, fingers twitching at the boy's neck. You're running away from your problems? That doesn't sound very heroic. Izuku stays silent, finishing his drink instead of answering. It's not very heroic, but for once, he wants to perform his old routine. Melt into the crowd. Vanish. Just another civilian in a crowd of many. No legacy, no villains, no quirks. Just him, Izuku. It's been so long since he's been called that by anyone other than his mother. Maybe it isn't. But I'm a human being. We're programmed to be selfish. I want a break. I need a break. He says, trying to get his point across. It's Shigaraki's turn to be quiet, his soda still halfway full. They sit like that for a long time, before Shigaraki's phone buzzes. When the villain reads the message, he huffs and drops his hand from Izuku's neck. Surprised, the student watches Shigaraki stand and finishes his soda in one hand while he stuffs his other hand in his pocket. I gotta go. Later, brat. With that, Shigaraki is gone, leaving Izuku alone in the booth. Thankfully, it's break. Izuku can stay in his room most of the time without too much inquiry. He still comes out to help around the house, though. It would be inconsiderate not to. Still, he's starting to run out of things to do by the end of the week. Thus, he finds himself staring at the ceiling blankly at 1 a.m. His room is stuffy, and Izuku is wide awake, mind buzzing with thoughts. A run. A run will tire him out, maybe help him keep his barely patched-together sleep schedule. Throwing on a hoodie and shorts, he sneaks across the living room to the front door and checks to make sure he has his phone and keys. Once that's confirmed, he opens and shuts the door quietly, locking it behind him and pulling the hood up on his face. His feet lead him to Takoba Beach. The water glitters in the bright moonlight, a faint breeze carrying the smell of salt to his nose. There isn't a person in sight. Slowly, he makes his way across the sand. When he's close enough to touch the water, he stops, hands deep in his pockets as he looks out over the water. It's ironic that he'd come here to think, considering this is where it all started. Something about the ocean calls him. It's wild and unrestrained and so free. It isn't subject to judgment, or bound by rules or morals or legacy. It just is. The sand shifts behind him as someone else approaches him. Judging from the gait. Did you reconsider? Izuku asks, tilting his head to watch Shigaraki approach him. Behind him, familiar purple musk swirls, almost blending into night around it. Shigaraki doesn't respond, just walks up to him, face partially hidden underneath hair and hood. It's silent for a couple minutes, the purple mist still swirling behind them. Finally, the villain speaks up. Only for a couple hours. My party members are either boring or annoying. Sensei said you could come as long as you don't try anything. Shigaraki shrugs, and Izuku feels a tidal wave of relief rush through him. You got it. Thanks. Don't thank me just yet, my party members are FANG whack jobs. That says a lot coming from you. Izuku responds dryly, hands deep in his pockets. Shigaraki doesn't respond, just walks through the portal with Izuku close behind him. The smell of alcohol, blood, and sweat assaults his nose, and it only takes a moment to adjust to the low light. It's a bar. A very well-furnished bar, but a bar, nonetheless. 6 people are scattered around the room, looking occupied. Behind the bar, Kurogyari was polishing a glass. Actually, the role of a bartender fits. Without the whole villain thing with his neck brace and suit and the polite demeanor. Yeah, it fits. Everyone, this is my guest. Be nice. Shigaraki says, and instantly the attention in the room shifts to them. Some of them are better at hiding it, but one girl leaps to her feet and squeals loudly. Ooh, who is he? Does his blood taste good? Blood? It's then he spots a pair of fangs in her grin. Blood-based quirk. These are most of my new party members. Some of them are out right now. Izuku nods in understanding, tugging the hood off of his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he notices Kurogyari's form flicker. He's so cute. The blonde girl grins even wider and bounces up to him, the glint of metal the only warning before she attempts to stab him. Years of practice dodging elongated, sharp fingers is how he manages to yank his body violently out of the way, quickly righting himself and watching the girl for any more attacks. She doesn't move threateningly, just pouts and clutches her knife to her chest. It makes him feel bad. People with blood quirks had it harder than most, especially when finding a clean source of blood. Sorry, you startled me. You have a blood-based quirk, right? Do you need my blood? She looks surprised at his question, her smile disappearing for a moment as she scrutinized him. He gives her a small smile and she slowly steps forwards, a gleam in her eye. I haven't had any in weeks. My supply ran out right before I met Hanzi. She pouts again, and Izuku raises an eyebrow. Shigaraki. He stifles a giggle, his smile getting a little bigger behind his hand. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm disease-free, so if you want some, you can have it. Just don't take enough to make me pass out, please. And then she lights up, grin even brighter than before. An hour later, Izuku is resting on a couch, trying to beat Shigaraki and a person with a lizard-type quirk called Spinner at Mario Kart. He is not terrible, to put it nicely, but the villains are too busy screaming insults at the screen to care. In the corner, Toga and a person in a bright orange jacket converse, the latter wearing a soft smile as they spoke to the girl. A man with burns disappeared shortly after his blood donation, and the man with a gray and black mask leaning out a window and smoking a cigarette. Another person with a yellow trench coat and a geometric mask is talking to Kurogyari, who seems to be keeping an eye on him. Overall, it's relaxing. No one calls him Deku or mentions heroism or the pressure of All Might. It's not on purpose, but the man's so oblivious sometimes it's hard to think of him as the symbol of peace or talks of becoming a new symbol God knows that isn't what society needs or desperately sprinting through a never-ending tunnel just to be on equal grounds with his classmates in a fight. He's just Izuku. A couple rounds later, he watches the controller disintegrate in Shigaraki's hands. The first thought that comes to his mind is why he doesn't have gloves? Then he remembers Shigaraki is a villain and probably needs his death weapons for hands ready at all times. Still, judging from Kurogyari's long-suffering sigh, this happens semi-regularly. Maybe artist's gloves? Those seem like a better option. Filing away the information for a later date, he looks up at the screen. The game pauses because the controller disconnected. Quietly, he hands his remote to Shigaraki, whose frustrated expression morphs into resignation as he takes it from the scarred, crooked hands. Thanks, brat. With that, they start again, yelling obscenities at the TV. By the time he stumbles back home, it's 8 in the morning and his phone has been blowing up for the past hour. After a flurry of apologies and a half-truth about going for a morning run and stumbling on a couple friends and losing track of the time, he's released to his room. His mom tells him to text her next time and heads to the kitchen to make breakfast. For the once, he feels light, and a smile is easy to conjure to his lips. It's smaller than his normal forced ones, but it's the most genuine one Inko has seen in a long time. The third time Shigaraki brings him to the bar, Izuku has a clean bill of health and allows Toga to take a bigger amount of blood than last time. It leaves him woozy and slightly off-kilter, so he lays back on a ragged beanbag, quietly listening to Spinner attempt to beat a level for the 7th time. The burned man is back, and approaches him after a very long staring contest. You're the brat that broke his bones during the sports festival. His voice sounds like he's been smoking since he was a child, but considering his condition, that made sense. Not being immune to your own quirk tended to mess you up in more ways than one. I am. You're a person who can't use their quirk without hurting themselves. Ever considered support items? Turquoise eyes narrow, and a sinking feeling of realization settles in his gut. Todoroki has 2 older brothers. One is functionally quirkless, and one burned to death in his own flames. Yet another Todoroki family secret I'm technically not supposed to know. Sighing, Izuku slumped into the beanbag, closing his eyes. The memory of gray and turquoise eyes presses down on his chest, and he does his best to breathe through it. If the burned man is anything like his brother, he probably doesn't want to be associated with his family at all, so it's best not to bring it up. You do have a backbone. I'm Dabi. You have a name besides brat? Dabi knows his name. This is a test. Izuku doesn't want to be called Deku anymore. Every time the name escapes his friend's lips, he has to suppress a flinch. I'm Izuku. The 5th time he visits the bar, he hands Shigaraki a pair of black artist's gloves. It's pretty quiet compared to last time, and the only people there are Kurojairi, Magna, and Dabi. The rest are nowhere to be found. None of them react to his presence anymore. Shigaraki stares at the pieces of cloth for a minute before looking back up at Izuku with suspicion. What are those? Izuku blinks. Artist gloves. He slips them onto his hands to demonstrate, and then picks up a controller off of the couch. You don't have to worry about disintegrating stuff with these. He drops the controller and takes off the gloves, handing them to Shigaraki. The villain takes them with wide eyes, the hand on his face barely concealing his surprise. Once he puts them on, he picks up the controller and experimentally puts all of his fingers on it. When it doesn't disintegrate, a gleeful grin spreads on Shigaraki's face. Behind them, Kurojairi lets out a quiet sigh of relief. Dabi scoffs, muttering something like, about time, and Magna nods in approval. Izuku doesn't notice any of this, just picks up another controller and sits down on the couch, motioning towards the TV. The scarred man grins and flops down, placing the embalmed hand on the arm of the couch. Where are the rest of his hands? Izuku doesn't want to know. Here. Most of the members are at the bar tonight, but he tries to be as discreet as possible. Keyword is tries. Everyone is nosy, so they instantly perk up, curious as to what's going on. Dabi eyes the gift with amusement. Kid, a tube of burn cream is going to fix all of. He gestures to his body. This. Try it. You'd be surprised, the stuff works miracles. See. Izuku lifts up his shirt and points to a faint starburst-shaped burn on his stomach. It was 3rd or 4th degree, I think? And now it's barely there. It's quirk-enhanced too. Dabi stares at the scar on his stomach with uncomfortable intensity. Quickly, Izuku drops his shirt and shoves the burn cream into the villain's hands. Anyway, you should try it. I don't know if the dot staples are a fashion statement or not, but they're asking for an infection. And just like that, the atmosphere lightened, someone snorting quietly. That earns them a glare from Dabi. Hey Shigaraki, do you think a staple remover is Dabi's worst enemy? Izuku asks idly while they're playing Mario Kart. Spinner almost drops his controller, and Shigaraki lets out a scratchy cackle that makes Kurogiri jump. Izuku ignores all of this, pulling ahead of them and dropping multiple blue shells. You little sheet. Hey! In the corner, Toga collapses into a fit of giggles. Magna and Twice laugh too, nearly knocking over the bottle of nail polish they were using. Noticing Spinner and Shigaraki gaining on him, he smiles and starts talking again. I bet when he goes out he burns office supplies with extreme prejudice. Like a bonfire in the middle of nowhere at midnight. Oh my god, Spinner wheezes, leaning over and allowing Izuku to pull ahead. Shigaraki grins, but doesn't lose focus and speeds past Izuku right as he dispatches a banana peel. It hits Spinner instead, who lets out a stream of colorful curses. I can see it. No, I can't. Twice cackles, rolling on the floor. Izuku is taken out by a red shell and slumps back against the couch with a pout. I was so close to winning. Nah, USCK. Shigaraki says, clicking the restart button. Spinner nods along, giving Izuku a pat on the shoulder without a trace of sympathy on his face. Ouch. Izuku, can I do your hair? Toga asks after he loses to Spinner and Shigaraki for the 1000th time this evening. If you want to, sure. Just so you know, it's pretty hard to handle. He leaves the couch. There's no chance of him winning tonight. Both of them are fired up over that something. Izuku isn't sure he wants to know, so he retreats to Toga and Magna. An hour later, his nails are painted black, he's wearing eyeliner, and Toga is braiding his curls. You dye your hair? Toga asks, fingers gentle against his scalp. Yeah, I started getting white streaks in the first year of middle school. Probably from all of the stress I was under. I bet you'd look super cool with white streaks. Why'd you dye it? Izuku shrugs, inspecting his painted nails with appreciation. He'd always wanted to try something like this, but making himself any more of a target wasn't an option. He was already a weak, quirkless freak. Making himself look the part was what got him out of beatings most of the time. Despite what all might thought, he did have muscle before his training started. They were just lean and understated. Bulking up would be an invitation for fights, especially from Kaken. He shudders at the thought of his childhood friend finding out about his 10th month training community service. Thanks for. The door slams open, revealing Dabi and Mr. Compress. Guess what, fuckers? Indignant screeching from the couch and complete silence from Kurogiri. Neither seems to care at the non-answers. Mr. Compress sighs and shakes his head, but follows Dabi into the bar, closing the door behind them. We found a motorcycle. Izuku perks up, but the other villains look at Dabi like he's stupid. Dabi, none of us even know how to drive a car. Shigaraki says, sounding incredibly annoyed. I can drive. You learned from video games, Spinner. It doesn't count. Magna calls from the bar, sipping a pink-colored drink. Besides, we already have Kurogiri. Shigaraki says, ignoring the Misty Man's pointed stare. By now, Izuku is practically buzzing with excitement, a huge grin on his face. I can drive. I'm planning on getting my license soon. Can I see it? He wiggles out of Toga's grasp, darting up to Dabi with a big smile. Dabi raises an eyebrow, and Shigaraki cackles. Driving? I'd like to see you try, brat. Toga bounces up beside him, giving him a big grin. I want to see too. Mr. Compress sighs, and Spinner stands up and crosses his arms. No way he's better than me. That he's better than me. Spinner admits, watching the green-haired teenager cackle like a maniac as he pulls the front wheel off of the ground and executes a perfect right turn. Go Z! Toga cheers, jumping up and down excitedly. I didn't think he'd be like. Shigaraki waves his hand as the motorcycle zooms past them, the rider nothing more than a blur of green. He's not a boring hero pipsqueak after all. Dabi says, nodding in approval. I don't think he ever was. He seems happier here. More relaxed. Magna speaks up, watching the boy with fondness. She'd liked him since his agreement with her "gender is a social construct" speech, and the fondness grew even more when he offered her flamboyant, pink and green feathered coat, stating that it seemed like her style. Plus, his generally cheerful and calm attitude is a welcome break from the league's overall murderous psycho gamer vibes. Yeah, he asked me to take him with me. Something about making a bad deal. Shigaraki comments, watching Izuku nearly flip headfirst over the handles to stop himself from hitting the brick wall the end of the alleyway behind the bar. A bad deal? With who? Mr. Compress asks, curiosity piqued. No idea. Shigaraki shrugs. I made too many cookies. Izuku explains as he holds up a paper bag to the gathered people. The smell of chocolate and sugar is enough to lure Toga over, and she snatches the bag out of his hands. Shigaraki peers at the bag in the blonde girl's hands. How do we know it isn't poisoned or sheet? He asks, hands ghosting over his bandaged neck. If you want, I'll take a bite out of all of them. No. That's okay. No thanks. Please don't. The pipsqueak wouldn't poison us, he's too heroic for that. Izuku represses a flinch and flops onto the beanbag. There's a scuffle before it's determined that Kurogyari should distribute the cookies since he doesn't eat food now. That's interesting. Where does he get his energy from? And then it calms down, everyone retreating to eat in peace. Dabi's scars are less violently purple than a couple weeks ago, and Toga seems content. He introduced Shigaraki to lotion and chapstick a week ago, and his skin has already started improving. Why'd you make these anyway? Dabi asks, finishing his last cookie in the corner of the bar, right next to the second TV. Oh, my hands are pretty messed up from the sports festival, so I looked up ways to keep them from hurting. Baking was one of the suggestions. Several sets of eyes focus on him. You have chronic pain? Magna asks, eyeing his crooked hands. Izuku nods, holding a hand up and flexing it with a wince. Yeah, recovery girl did surgery on one after my match with Todoroki. I woke up hours after the festival and she cleared me to go. She didn't say anything about physical therapy, so I figured I wouldn't bother her anymore. She was sad enough to let me know not to come back for any more quirk-related injuries. He sighs, shoving his hand into his pocket. The atmosphere darkens as they process his words. Shigaraki's hands move up to his neck, fingers pressing down on the bandages. Dabi is stiff, eyes in slits. Toga's ever-present smile is gone, and she clutches her knife tightly. Magna stopped mid-sip of her drink, and sets it down on the table a little too hard. Kurogyari and Twice are silent, while Spinner looks uneasy. She denied you medical treatment? Mr. Compress finally asks, his ever-moving hands still for once. I guess? It's fine, I figured out the bone-breaking thing and minor injuries are easy to deal with. Izuku shrugs, watching the news anchor on the TV report on a minor villain attack near a train station. Spinner's face darkens at the teenager's dismissal and he takes a half step forwards. Izuku, you shouldn't deal with your injuries alone. UA may be a prestigious school, but they shouldn't get away with denying medical treatment to a student. The boy in question looks over at the group, finally sensing their shift in mood. He tilts his head, a gesture reminiscent of a small, cute animal. But I guess you're right, he says, and the topic is dropped. For the rest of the night, Spinner has a contemplative look in his eye, and the rest of the group is tenser than usual. Dabi and Toga invited him to go grocery shopping with them. Seeing as Shigaraki had gone into hyper-focus mode to beat a new game, he decided to leave the villain alone. Apparently, Kurogyari is busy somewhere else, so the task of buying food for the league falls on them. Dabi shoved a grocery list into Izuku's hands and started walking through the dark streets with confidence. He's wearing a surgical mask, and his sleeves are rolled down to conceal his burns. Toga has changed out of her school uniform and wears a skirt under a long, orange coat. It's probably one of Mr. Compress. They pass some people eye them warily, that's fair, the area where the bar is located is kind of shady, but neither of the villains seem to mind the stares, so he ignores them too. 30 minutes later, a blast of air conditioning hits them in the face. The store is a ghost town most likely because of the time, but the front of the store is occupied by a cashier has heavy bags under her eyes. Toga darts for the candy section, and Dabi drifts towards the toy section, leaving Izuku by the entrance with the list still in hand. Well, sighing, he grabbed a cart and started breezing through the aisles, putting everything from the list into the cart and then adding the brand of lotion Shigaraki liked he's been running out and some of the candy Toga was staring at, and then goes to the specialty aisle to buy some of the snacks he'd heard Spinner mentioning fondly. Once he's done, he double-checks the list and throws an orange juice. God knows Shigaraki needs any kind of vitamin he can ingest and decides this is good. "I'm done," he yells, tapping his scarred fingers on the handle of the basket. As if summoned, both parties appear and Dabi shoves a wad of cash into his hands. Toga just grins at him and he smiles back. Sighing, he takes the cash and patiently waits for the cashier to bag everything before handing it to her. She eyes it for a minute before taking it and counting it out, and handing back the correct amount. Dabi and Toga grab most of the bags, and Izuku grabs the rest. With that, the shopping trip is over, and they step out of the air-conditioned store. "That was quick," Toga said, a cheerful smile on her face as she skipped ahead of them. Dabi grunted in agreement, looking somewhat strained by the bags. He doesn't complain, though, just keeps on going. Halfway home, a man with arms covered in scales stumbles out of an alleyway, gait uneven. When he looks up, there's a triumphant expression on his face. "I finally found you, you BC. Where's my goddamn money?" His tone is aggressive, and he looks directly at Dabi, who wears his typical bored expression. On closer inspection, the burned man's arms are shaking slightly, but he clutches the handles of the grocery bags tight to hide it. "I have no idea what you're talking about, old man." "Wrong thing to say." The man's scales flare with faint light, and his face twists in anger. "I know it's you, Dabi. Where the hell is my money?" "Nope. Not dealing with this today." The man's scales are getting brighter and brighter, lighting up the dim street. Crouching down low, he darts forwards and smashes his foot into the man's chin. He drops like a stone, and Izuku lets out a sigh of relief and checks the grocery bags. "Oh good, nothing's broken." Dabi gapes at him while Toga giggles excitedly, and he gives them a lopsided smile. "Did you seriously just jeopardize your spot in the hero course for little old me?" The burned man asks, trying to cover his incredulous tone with sarcasm. "No, you can only be charged with assault if you use your quirk on somebody. If he tried to take me to court, it would immediately be dismissed since he was doing that thing with his scales." Izuku gestures at the crumpled man, and looks of understanding on the villains' faces. "That's effed up." "It is. All of the laws have been altered around quirks, and it leaves a lot of loopholes and ways to get away with crimes without being convicted." They're quiet after that. After dragging the unconscious man into a nearby alleyway, they head back to the bar. The bar is pretty empty tonight. It's only Shigaraki and Kurogyari. The others are out on a mission and Twice is taking a mental health day. Good for him, he's been seeming more stressed lately. He'd given up on playing the first-person shooter game and just sprawled on the couch, watching Shigaraki die for the 5th time this hour. Kurogyari seems nonplussed by the stream of curse words that leave the scarred man's lips, and Izuku just smiles, used to it. But he's not used to it. He's used to being around Shigaraki and Kurogyari and the others. He's used to their rants about how terrible society is and nodding at points he agrees on. He's used to offering Toga his blood and Kurogyari's constant state of disapproval and Magna's brightly colored drinks and Twice's personalities and Dabi's staples and Mr. Compress magic tricks and Spinner's stain worship. It makes him feel light, his thoughts of all might and one for all banished. They don't call him names he doesn't like or expect impossible things from him. Sighing, he sits up, waiting for Shigaraki to calm down a little more before leaning over and picking up a strategy game from the stack beside the couch. The blue-haired man doesn't complain, just huffs and leans back onto the couch, stretching out like a lanky, underfed cat. The opening music starts, and Izuku picks up the second controller and clicks start. An hour later, Shigaraki is cursing for another reason entirely. "How the F did you find that? I could have sworn the site was empty." "I don't know how you missed it. The graphics were super obvious. All of the statues are facing it, and the bricks are raised in the shape of a door. See?" He points at the screen, zooming in a little. Shigaraki leans in, eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen. "I still don't see it." A phone goes off, making him jump. After checking his own, He wasn't going to give his mother another heart attack by not responding. He learned his lesson the first time, and determining it isn't his, he looks over to Shigaraki, who's looking at Kurogyari. A portal forms by the door, and Izuku watches with raised eyebrows as Spinner hauls but through it, nearly stumbling over his own feet. He's covered in a weird powdery substance and his weapons are crusted with blood, which the student pointedly ignores. Mr. Compress is close behind, fancy mask cracked and his gloves missing. Magna is next, looking distressed. Finally, Dabi sprints through, skidding to a stop right before he hits the bar. In his arms is Toga. She's limp and there's a blade without a handle in her shoulder. There's blood. Way too much of it. It must have hit an artery. It could bleed out in minutes without medical treatment. They all start talking at once, but Izuku ignores them, going to Toga's side and examining her shoulder. Yeah, that blade definitely nicked an artery. Face pale, he turns to Kurogyari, who seems the calmest. Whether or not it's because of his quirk is to be determined. Kurogyari, do you have a first aid kit? The misty man flickers, then bends down and grabs a white box from under the bar and hands it to him. Give me the cheapest vodka you have too. He instructs, gesturing for Dabi to follow him. Shigaraki is shooed off of the couch, grumbling about blood stains. Izuku ignores him, watching Dabi set her down and accepting the bottle of vodka that warps in front of him. Once she's laying down, he takes off his hoodie and ball it up, pressing it around the wound, trying to stem of the blood while opening up the first aid kit. Searching inside it, he notices. Does anyone have any bandages? He looks around, and they all look at a loss as they shake their heads. Even Mr. Compress shakes his head, and Izuku has to force himself to take deep, calming breaths. It's okay, he's worked without bandages before. It's okay. Steeling himself, he checks Toga's wound. The blood flow has slowed, but it's still steady. And he still needs to remove the blade, which will make her lose more blood. So he needs to stem the blood first with some form of fabric and try to limit the circulation. He doesn't notice he's mumbling as he starts tearing at his shirt with blood-covered hands, making bandages. Dabi, hold her up. Did it go all the way through? Dabi is there, carefully keeping the girl's bloody back off the couch. To access the wound better, he tears the fabric of her jacket away from her wound, making sure to keep her chest as covered as possible. No. Thank God. Popping the top of the vodka, is it vodka? Why is it in a wine bottle? With his teeth, he soaks the makeshift bandages in it. Okay, wrap them as tightly as possible and get the hoodie out of the way. Toga's face screws up in pain. Avoid messing with the knife until absolutely necessary. Quickly, he wrapped the area, doing his best to clean up the excess blood so he could see the wound. Thankfully, the bleeding has gone down, but it's left Toga pale. Ignoring the coppery smell, he peers at the wound. It's going to need stitches. Dabi, set her down. Someone disinfect the needle and string in the kit. I'll sew her up once I get the knife out of her shoulder. Mr. Compress steps forwards and takes the kit while Izuku sticks one of the needles into his arm and allows it to fill up the bag. His head is light, but he continues his movements, forcing his hands to be steady as he dismantles the bag with blood from her gear and sticks the needle into her injured arm, effectively giving her a blood transfusion. He's O negative, and she said something about being AB, so it should work without causing any serious damage. The magician reappears, holding a needle and string in between freshly gloved fingers. Izuku takes it, dunks it into the bottle of alcohol for good measure, then turns back to the blonde. Gotta get the knife out and make sure she doesn't bleed out. Eyes narrowed, he keeps his blood-soaked hoodie close at hand and puts an arm over Toga, angling it so that she can't make any sudden movements. Lightly, he wraps his hand around the blade. She doesn't react. Steeling himself, he pulls the blade out. She jarks violently, crying out in pain. He holds her down with ease, dropping the piece of metal to the floor, then pouring alcohol on his hand and grabbing the needle. Holding Toga steady, he sews the wound shut efficiently and quickly, ignoring the whimpers from his friend as he fixes her. Once it's sewn shut, he presses a clean part of his hoodie down on her shoulder and tears his shirt again, soaking the cloth in alcohol and switching it out with the hoodie. He keeps on pressing it down, and eventually, blood stops spotting the fabric. Hands shaking, he sticks the needle back into his arm and watches it suck up blood again. When it's full, he disinfects it and sticks the needle back into Toga's uninjured arm. Woozy from the loss of blood and stress, he watches the blood drain out of the bag before relaxing, letting out a sigh and removing the needle. With a frown, he watches Toga breathe for a second before judging there isn't anything else he can do. I think she'll be okay. Does she have a bed somewhere quiet? He rises to his feet, swaying slightly. A hand grabs his arm, bracing him. Blinking, he looks up at a cracked geometric mask. That was nice of him. Toga needs to sleep to regain the blood she lost, and she's sensitive to noise so she won't rest enough unless it's quiet. Mr. Compress nods, and Dobby reappears, taking Toga from the couch and behind the second door. Did he say all of that out loud? Frowning, he stared at his bloody hoodie on the couch. Oh well, at least he has his shirt. Nope. His shirt barely covers his chest. How is he going to go home like this? Mom will ask questions and, come on. Another set of hands pulls him away from Mr. Compress, and he stumbles along behind them, barely keeping up. His face meets something soft, and he's out like a light. He wakes up to complete darkness. In his pocket, his phone is buzzing. Tiredly, he checks the caller. Everything comes rushing back to him, and he hits the accept button. Instantly, his mom's voice is in his ear, and she's asking if he's okay, and that he was supposed to be home 2 hours ago. He frowns, upset to have been the one to worry her so much. Mom, I'm okay. My friend. He spots a pair of red eyes watching him and nearly jumps back in surprise. Shooting Shigaraki a glare, he turns back to his phone. My friend got startled and accidentally knocked us out with their quirk. Sorry to make you worry, I just woke up. He can feel his mom's sigh of relief from the other side of the line. Guilt wells up in his chest and he apologizes again. It's okay, baby. I know you're a teenager now and you need your space. Please just be careful, okay? Yeah. He trails off, remembering Toga's pale face. Actually, do you mind if I stay over? My friend seems pretty stressed out and I don't want to leave them alone. She hesitates for a minute, and he can practically hear her internal debate. Patiently, he waits, ignoring the surprise in Shigaraki's eyes. I thought you were going to meet up with Yagi tomorrow? And just like that, the weight sinks back onto his shoulders. He'd forgotten about Yagi's visit. Originally, he and All Might would schedule monthly checkups to go over his progress with One for All and talk about ways to get him acknowledged as early on as a new symbol of peace. A lone pillar that never relies on others and works themselves to their grave. Something heavy curls in his gut. Steadying his breathing, he stares at the covers, ignoring his blood-covered hands. Why does he feel like this? He should be grateful. All Might gave him the opportunity to be a hero, gave him a way to compete with those born with quirks. It would be impossible without a quirk. After all, what could someone without a quirk do? It's nice to dream, but you have to be realistic. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. I guess I'll head home. He chuckles, his customary smile sliding onto his face. I'll see you soon. He waits for her to hang up, then drops the phone onto the bed, smile gone. He spaces out for a minute, flexing his blood-caked hands absent-mindedly. He needs to go home. He wouldn't be opposed to the idea normally, but between Toga's injury and All Might visiting, that was the most fake smile and laugh I've ever seen. Shigaraki speaks up from his chair in the middle of the room. Izuku looks up, resisting the urge to run his hands through his hair. Red eyes bore into green, and for a moment, the student remembers what Shigaraki is. A villain. One that tried to kill him. Then why does he feel so safe here? The answer isn't forthcoming, so he breaks off their staring contest and stands up. Can I borrow a hoodie? Shigaraki points towards a small door to his left. He walks over, opening the door to see a closet with dozens of nearly identical black hoodies neatly hung up. Probably Kurojire's doing. Slipping off his ruined shirt, he grabs the nearest hoodie and puts it on. The bathroom is 2 doors to the left. The bar is down the stairs. Shigaraki says, and Izuku picks up his phone and slips it his pocket. After a moment's thought, he grabs a pen and scrap of paper and jots his number down. Tell me when she's awake, please. The next day is hellish as he attempts to make himself look more awake and tries not to think about how much blood Toga lost and is she okay, and he meets with Yagi, telling him about his progress with One for All and complimenting his restraint during the finals bullshit. All Might had zero restraint during that fight. He was impaled on a metal pole and would have died without Recovery Girl's quirk and laughs at his awkward jokes. Yagi starts talking about publicity stunts and building off of 1A's fame from the multiple villain attacks, and Izuku zones out, the suffocating feeling back full force. My boy, the nickname sends a thrill through him. Are you alright? You seem a little distracted. Izuku freezes, then focuses on the blonde man, the lie already slipping off his tongue. I'm okay, I'm just worried about a friend. They had a quirk accident last night and seemed pretty upset when I left. Yagi smiles bigger and pats him on the shoulder heavily. Always worrying about others. That's why you'll make a good symbol of peace. He laughed, and Izuku laughed too. He just wants to save people. After 2 sleepless nights, his phone goes off at 3 a.m. It's an unknown number, but he opens it up anyway. It's one image attached to a text. I lived. Image. Toga throwing up a peace sign with Twice, Dabi and Mr. Compress in the background. The weight lifts off of his shoulders, and he smiles widely, eyes tearing up. Is he asleep? Shigaraki asks, confusion and curiosity warring on his face. The other league members are scattered across the bar, Spinner and Twice on the other side of the couch, Dabi occupying the beanbag, Toga sprawled on the floor beside Magna. Mr. Compress is on a bar stool across from Kurogyari, who seemed to have stopped his nightly cleaning spree. Izuku is on the couch too, and is leaning against Shigaraki's shoulder, fast asleep. He'd most of the day going over his old notes on hero fighting styles, and tentatively practicing 1 or 2 super moves based on kicks instead of punches. It felt right, but the new movements and the overwhelming onslaught of thoughts on changing his training regimen and how to tell All Might about it tired him out. Wow, he's so cute when he sleeps. Toga squeals, eyes bright as she grins at Izuku. Magna hums in agreement as she cleans her magnet. Shigaraki completely unused to physical contact, much less someone sleeping on him shifts, trying to get his gloved hand out from under the kid. Dabi smirks at Shigaraki's clear discomfort, earning a glare from the blue-haired man. Twice is too occupied by the movie to notice, and Spinner glares at Shigaraki from across the couch, internally mourning at the loss of the natural space heater. Izuku's body temperature is almost on par with Dabi's, and it's a welcome break from the typically cool building. Mr. Compress smiles under his mask, the scene reminding him of his own siblings. It would seem we've become attached. Well, Izuku stabilized the overall emotion of the league and made it much easier for them to get along. The first week was rough, and a lot of fights broke out, but once the child arrived, it seemed to start smoothing out. Shigaraki and Toga were less prone towards bodily harm, Spinner and Dabi stopped arguing over Stain's ideals, Magna and Twice stopped arguing over random things for the hell of it, and Kurogyari, despite his initial reservations, seemed to accept the child after he managed to get groceries and put them away properly without incident. Overall, things had improved. Not that the hero student realizes what he'd done. At least not yet. Izuku's eyes snap open, breathing uneven. The room is dark and quiet, and he can make out dark lumps all around him. He can't quite remember his dream, just the feeling of being crushed by something. Quietly sighing, he slides off of the couch and slips behind the bar. A moment later, he opens the cap on a bottle of water and takes a couple sips. It helps with his throat, and the cold plastic grounds him in the waking world. As he idly looks around, he notices Kurogyari is nowhere to be seen. He must have gone to bed. Opening his phone, he texts his mom that he's okay, and asks to stay over at his friend's house for the night. She replies in a matter of seconds, resignedly agreeing to his request and telling him to be safe. Sighing quietly, he slips the phone back into his pocket and leans over the counter, pressing his forehead to the cool wood. A soft clicking sound comes from his right, and white light bathes him. Izuku turns his face to see the second TV, the one that's never on. A big sound only displayed on the screen. Hello, child. The voice is a breath away from death, but holds surety in itself, the kind that comes with having power and knowing how to utilize it. Blinking owlishly, he stares at the screen for a moment before responding. Ah, you must be Shigaraki-sensei. I've been meaning to thank you. He keeps his voice soft, not wanting to wake up the others. Oh, the voice asked, filled with amusement. Michim. It probably inconvenient to have a hero in training over so much, seeing as you're. He gestures vaguely with his hand. So I appreciate it. It's quiet for a moment, the light from the TV bathing the bar in white light. My students said that you made a bad deal with someone. What kind of deal was it, that you would turn to villains for help? Straight to the point. Izuku couldn't blame the person. It was strange that a hero would ask a villain that attempted to murder their classmates and teacher for help, much less enjoy their company. Lightly, he tapped the cap of the water bottle, trying to figure out how to phrase his feelings. They'd been weighing heavily on his body for a long time, but vocalizing them. He sighs. The deal is only one part of the issue. I think it's more the person who I made the deal with. They have a good heart, but I feel like they're projecting on me. They want me to continue the work they were doing, even though the work can be improved. They're blind to the issues their work has caused society as a whole. I don't think they know what kind of person I am, even after spending the last year with me. They barely even know how to teach me. My progress has been through my own trial and error more than their teaching. Izuku pauses, turning over his words in his head. It's not that I'm ungrateful, I just don't think continuing his work would be right. And I want to tell them, but I don't know how to explain it to them in a way they would understand because they didn't grow up the way I did. They don't understand the feeling of powerlessness the way I do. As much as I hate to think about it, their work is part of the reason I grew up the way I did. He rubbed a hand over his eyes, the suffocating feeling creeping back up on him. Vocalizing his problems was only the first step, and it wasn't going to magically make everything better. The room is quiet again. He can hear the steady breathing of the other occupants of the room, and a small smile makes its way onto his face. They've never all fallen asleep in the same room, so it's a new experience for him. It also means they trust each other enough not to kill each other in their sleep, which is good. Is becoming a hero part of the deal? The person asks, sounding carefully neutral. He doesn't blame them. They probably didn't expect to be info dumped in the middle of the night. Yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to be a hero, but it wasn't really the title that appealed to me, it was the idea of having the power to reach out and help people. He explains, keeping his voice soft so as not to disturb the others. I see. Have you always wanted to help people? Yes. Izuku responds with no hesitation. Another pause. If you hadn't made the deal, would you still have pursued a career in heroics? Even though the industry is corrupt to its core. The voice asks, questions prodding and sharp. The person, whoever they are, doesn't like heroics. That explains Shigaraki's general hatred for the field. And if he's homicidally angry about it, then how angry is this person? I'm aware of how corrupt the industry is, and that's why I'm joining it. I want to change it from the inside. Use the loopholes and twist them to my advantage so people like Endeavor and Kaken face consequences. Heroes are almost untouchable legally, and that would give me a lot of resources to get important things done quickly and efficiently. No one should be discriminated against because of their quirk, no one should be turned away from hospitals, and people shouldn't be labeled as villains because they can't control their quirk. Heroes are public servants first, celebrities second. They should know how to tell the difference from a criminal and a scared civilian. Laws should apply to them, not bend to them. Most importantly, they should know that not every situation calls for violence. It isn't until the third year that UA offers a course on how to de-escalate dangerous situations, and it's optional. Other hero schools don't even bother offering the class. He stops when he hears someone shift, frowning and softening his voice. The root of most of society's issues is how willfully ignorant we are. All they see when they look at a villain is a criminal, not a person reaching their breaking point because of others. They choose to see the world in black and white, rather than the many shades of gray it actually is. I want people to realize the consequences of over-reliance on heroes and constantly shoving others into pretty little packages so they don't have to think too hard. Izuku finches, taking a breath and composing himself. Quirkless freak. So to answer your question, I would have tried to be a hero with or without the deal. It might not have worked, but I refuse to leave a broken system in place for convenience. I won't forget. A long silence. Then a deep chuckle comes from the TV, making him jump. Quickly, he reaches over and turns down the volume, checking the dark lumps. None of them have moved, thankfully. Letting out a quiet sigh of relief, he takes another sip of his water. You're more aware than most hero hopefuls. So refreshing to hear someone from the other side admit the system has flaws, and show a passion to solve them. I was worried you'd be another child blinded by hero worship. It's hard to be blinded by hero worship when you get the crap beaten out of you regularly and no one steps in or bothers to ask what caused those burns or why is your wrist broken or tells you the machines can't handle someone like you or heroes like Endeavor exist or All Might is dying to uphold his childhood fantasy and Kakin is in UA with a clean record and I just barely got in. Izuku takes a deep breath, unclenching his fists and setting the water bottle onto the bar. Being blind was never an option for me. Be realistic. He may not be the first quirkless hero, but he'll make sure anyone with that dream has the option to come forwards. And that will start when he fixes the system. This has been enlightening. I must say, I'm looking forwards to those changes you want to make. Let's talk again soon, Izuku. With that, the TV shuts off, and Izuku is left in the dark. Shigaraki-sensei isn't as bad as I thought he would be. Of course he could be hiding his true nature, but the far too familiar bitterness at the hero system was something that couldn't be faked. Sighing, Izuku finishes his water and slips back to the couch. 3 forms are stretched out on it, leaving no room for him. Thankfully, there's space beside Dabi on the beanbag, so he slides on, ignoring the burned man's quiet grumble of annoyance. Eventually, an arm flops over him, and he bathes in the warmth. The next morning, he wakes up to arguing. The he was with me first. I didn't steal him, you crusty fucker. I don't even remember him getting here. The person under him rumbles, voice raspy from sleep. That's bullshit. It's too early in the morning for me to witness a murder. Kill him. Twice joins in and Izuku smiles. How come Izuku didn't cuddle with me? Toga whines. It's okay dear, there's always next time. Magna consoles Toga. Just admit to stealing him, you walking corpse. Shigaraki screeches, making him wince against his human heater. It's probably Dabi, but he's not really in the mood to get up and apologize for using him as a pillow just yet. It's pretty surprising none of them woke up when he talked to Shigaraki's sensei, though. Most of them are light sleepers, so the sound of conversation should have been enough for them to rise. The boy decides not to dwell on it, and curls closer to the skinny body under him, breathing in the scent of ash and burn cream. A hand rests on his head and ruffles his hair. Izuku sighs, moving his head so they have better access. Several quiet us make him blink again. Confused, he looks up and sees Dabi watching him with an unreadable expression. Turning around, he notices they're all still in the couch area and watching them with expressions resembling a person when they see a cute puppy. Instantly his face heats up, and he jumps off of Dabi and dives behind the beanbag to preserve his dignity. The laughter that follows makes it hard to keep the frown on his face, so he settles for a pout, looking over to Mr. Compress. He just shakes his head, mask making his expression impossible to determine. He ignores the laughter and teasing, choosing to follow the smell of breakfast instead. Shigaraki and Toga are close behind, both looking less annoyed by the prospect of food. His conversation from last night is pushed to the back of his mind at the sight of Kurogiri making scrambled eggs. It's his first day back at school, and the suffocating feeling is back. Still, he plows through, plastering a smile on his face. It's raining outside, and his hand is in more pain than usual, but he keeps smiling. Kakin is yelling at him, but he keeps smiling. Thankfully, Aizawa tells everyone to shut up. Good, he needs something to focus on besides the pins and needles in his hand. The morning progresses normally, with Izuku's note-taking slowed down by half. No one notices and he retreats to Todoroki's side come lunch. The stoic boy doesn't seem to mind much, and doesn't comment on his lack of chatter either. Izuku is grateful for that. After eating, he takes the spare bandages out of his backpack and wraps up his hand tightly. From what he read online, it helps with arthritis pain and swelling. Ida and Uraraka are too busy talking about budgeting to notice, but Todoroki shoots him a concerned look. He responds by smiling. Silently, he hopes the rain will stop soon. Training exercises are suspended until later notice, and All Might and Aizawa co-teach a lesson on heroic laws and property damage. It's nothing he doesn't know, so he gets distracted, doodling an outstretched hand in his notebook. Right as he's adding fingernails, he feels somebody's eyes on him. He looks up and meets Aizawa's dark eyes. It takes everything he has not to flinch and apologize mid-lesson. Quickly, he starts taking notes, guiltily avoiding the hero's gaze. Focus. Avoid attracting attention. Nothing good happens when teachers pay attention to him. It's another week before he makes it back to the bar, and he's swamped in work, so he ends up bringing it along with him. It hasn't stopped raining yet either, so he hasn't really had the chance to exercise or focus on anything besides work and managing the pain in his hand. The sound of Shigaraki and Spinner cursing each other out is familiar and easily ignored, and Toga just sort of hovers over his shoulder until he pulls out his math homework. Then she hisses and retreats somewhere. Mr. Compress, Twice, and Magna are nowhere to be seen, and Dabi is sprawled on the beanbag, watching the screen with amusement. Kurogyri is cleaning a glass, and occasionally looks over to him. Unfortunately, the bandages on his hands only do so much, and he has to take frequent breaks to massage the stiffness out of his limbs. Sighing, he goes back to his completed sheet and starts erasing the right answers and writing in the wrong answers, making sure to make minor mistakes. Once he's done, he opens up his secondary notebook and phone. Distantly, he hears a click. "Ah, you're back. I was wondering why Shigaraki was calmer than usual." "It's nice to be back, sir." He responds automatically, hand moving quickly to write down observations one of Ingenium's old fights. He doesn't notice the sudden silence or the amusement that radiates from the TV. "You seem busy." "I'm fixing my fighting style." He responds, absent-mindedly rubbing his aching hand. "That's warranted, considering the condition of your hands. Any more damage and they would probably lose basic functions." Izuka blinks, looking over at the TV. "How do you know?" The room is silent for a long moment, and Kurogyri flickers more than usual. Shigaraki looks awed by the person behind the TV, and Spinner and Dabi look equal parts uneasy and curious. "It's one of my quirks." The pause. "You have more than one quirk? That's so cool. How many do you have? Does your original quirk act like a copy quirk? Is there a way for you to categorize quirks once you have them? If you have a mutant quirk, does it force biological changes onto your body? That sounds painful. Do you have a longevity quirk? Have you ever done a brain scan? Is your quirk a mutation? Would you gain natural resistance to fire if you had a fire quirk? Does your brain categorize quirks by type? How long can you keep a quirk? Is there a time limit? Does it have an activation requirement? What about," he screeches to a halt verbally, slapping a hand over his mouth. "Damn it, you stupid Deku, didn't you learn your lesson the last time you asked about someone's quirk?" He internally curses himself, completely missing the bewildered expressions of the other people in the room. "Sorry, I must have made you uncomfortable." Izuka takes his hand off of his mouth, turning back to his notes and phone to hide his embarrassment at his slip-up. But he couldn't help it, someone having more than one quirk is unprecedented. So are transferable quirks, and look where you are. Not at all. I hope you understand my reluctance to disclose any details about my quirk, seeing as we are on opposing sides, though. The green-haired boy blinks, tilting his head to watch the static TV with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "Of course, I was just curious. I've always liked quirks." He responds carefully, trying to gauge the person's reaction. Izuka doesn't want to jeopardize his place here with unwanted questions, but he's itching to talk quirks now he's found someone who has a lot of experience with them. "Oh really?" An hour later, Izuku and the person behind the TV he never got a name, and he has the feeling he doesn't want one are discussing whether or not the category of mutation in quirk types should exist. The bar's occupants look like their brains are melting, and Twice had come in, listened to approximately 30 seconds of the conversation, and walked back out. Overall, It makes for an interesting evening and he goes home with some new ideas. Midoriya, why has your quirk been active the entire morning? Aizawa's tired voice comes from the depths of his yellow sleeping bag. Izuku blinks, fighting the urge to shrink away from his teacher. I thought if I kept it active a couple hours of the day at a low P percentage, it might help with C control and assimilating my B body to a higher power output? His squeaks a little at the end of his sentence and he cringes back. Thankfully, the rest of the class is at lunch, otherwise this would have been even more mortifying. After a very loud silence, Aizawa sighs and dismisses him. Today, we'll be redoing the training exercise from the beginning of last semester. All Might cheers, a big smile on his face. The rest of the class starts murmuring among themselves, but Izuku keeps quiet, praying that he won't get paired with Katsuki again. The pairings will be the same as last time, but the roles will be reversed. The heroes will play the villains, and vice versa. He explains, and Izuku's heart sinks. He's fighting Katsuki. But he nearly died last time. Why haven't the teachers here learned their lesson about pairing them together? His vision starts blurring at the edges, and words filter through his ears, becoming unidentifiable sounds. His limbs are heavy, and he feels rooted in place. Izuku jumps when Uraraka places a hand on his arm. She looks worried for some reason. Slowly, the world comes back to him, and he moves his arm upwards to pat her hand reassuringly. Sorry, I zoned out for a minute there. All Might said we're going to be the villains this time, right? Do you have any ideas for a strategy? With that, her signature determined but bubbly smile is back, though there's still a trace of worry in her eyes. I was thinking, it would be a terrible plan if Katsuki didn't hate Izuku as much as he did. If Izuku didn't know the other boy so well. But this was an exercise that he might as well have lost last time. He learned his lesson since then. So he waits on the porch of the building, admiring his altered hero outfit. He hadn't really asked for the sudden color change, but it looked nice, and he didn't mind the black. It went better with the red boots anyway. Though he could have done without the weird hood mask thing. Seriously, who designed this and got it approved without his knowledge it was useful for hiding just how nervous he is. Bakugu, we cannot just. Diu. A scream comes from a block away, making Izuku flinch. Quietly, he listens to All Might declare the match is starting, keeping an eye on his surroundings. And there he is. A blonde and a blue-haired boy rocket towards the entrance with little to no care of who sees them. Just like he planned. Uravity, I've spotted our targets. Are you in place? Yes. Good luck, Deku. He winces at the name, wishing his pettiness hadn't gotten the better of him all those months ago, but quickly turns his attention to the hero pair, who are now arguing right outside the gate. Be a trap. We must think logically. The hell? Deku isn't strong enough to be a trap. He probably just wanted to be his lazy but down and scare us without actually doing anything. Bakugu screams loudly enough that he can hear. Forcing his body to relax, he leaned a chin against his hand, watching the pair with feigned amusement. They seemed to notice the sudden change in atmosphere, and simultaneously turn to face him. He lets a smile slide onto his face, even though they can't see it. Ah, the two little heroes have come to prove their worth? That's too bad, I don't think you're up for the task. You have a long way to go before you're worthy enough to lick the ground beneath my boots, much less face me in battle. He laughs in the face of Katsuki's rage, pretending he's somewhere else. Somewhere safe. Die. Bakugu, wait. Katsuki blasts himself forwards, hand outstretched for Izuku's face. Everything blurs as he ducks under the punch and kicks Katsuki solidly on the jaw, just like with the man from before, and knocks him out. Before Ida can react, he uses 3% and lands a kick on the side of his armor that makes the metal crumple like paper. Taking advantage of his classmate's shock, he grabs the other boy's hair and smashes his face into his knee, making Ida drop to the floor. After determining they're knocked out, he snatches the capture tape from Katsuki's outfit and carries them both over the fence. Quickly, he tangles the capture tape and the boys together so hopelessly that it will take scissors to cut them out. Smiling, he walks away from the pair and back into the building, locking the door behind himself. Lightly tapping his comm, he reports to his teammate. Both heroes are unconscious and incapacitated. How are you doing on your end? Good. The bomb is in place, and I should be able to hold it for the remainder of our time, just in case one of them manages to escape. Thank you, Uravity. It's always a pleasure working with you. You sound so formal. She giggles, and he smiles softly. The pity in her eyes when he mentioned the quirkless stung the most. She was his first friend. Would they be friends if he didn't have a quirk, or would she pity him too? I'm just getting into character. He replies, absently rubbing his hands through his gloves. He'd based it off of a certain person, actually. Not that anyone would be able to tell. I won't forget. Neither boy wakes up for the remainder of the exercise, and Uraraka and Izuku are declared the winners. When asked why he knocked out the heroes, he shrugged and said it seemed like something a villain would do. Everyone is quieter after that, mulling over his words. All Might seems more subdued than normal, and his tan skin took on a lighter hue every time he looked at Izuku. Tonight, Dabi deigned to join them for Mario Kart and is the most petty a-hole Izuku has ever played against. He doesn't even want to win, just causes extreme inconvenience to a different person each round. For the past 3 rounds, Dabi has kept right in front of him and constantly uses banana peels on his car. The BSRD knows he isn't good at the game, and he still chooses to mess with him. The nerve! So Izuku does what he does best, talk. As soon as the next round starts, he opens his mouth. Did you know it takes 200 milligrams of nitroglycerin to stop someone's heart? If I were to freeze that amount of Kaken's sweat into ice cubes, I could mix it with, say, sweet rum and offer it to Endeavor. He'd have to drink the alcohol slower to avoid causing a fire hazard. His competitors are falling behind, just as he planned. And the taste of nitroglycerin would be mellowed out by the alcohol. Of course, I'd have to drink the rum to avoid suspicion, so I'd drink it faster and let the ice cubes melt halfway so my heart wouldn't stop. Plus, nitroglycerin wouldn't leave any traces in an autopsy, so doctors would assume it was a heart attack. He's miles ahead of the competition now, and easily wins first place. With a satisfied smirk, he looks over at the villains, who stare at him with blank expressions. Dabi, in particular, looks like he's just seen God as he stares at the green-haired boy. Did you just plan an assassination while playing Mario Kart? Spinner asks with wide eyes, looking from Izuku to the screen and back again. Holy shit. Let's do it. Twice cheers, and Magna just takes another sip of her drink, then grimaces. I've never liked Endeavor. Mr. Compress muses, messing with one of his ever-present marbles. Could you repeat that? Dabi asks, and where did you get that notebook? Izuku shrieks, jumping backwards and landing on Shigaraki's lap. The blue-haired man screeches indignantly and tries to push him off, with no success. Geez brat, what are you made of, bricks? Yup. Izuku says, grinning at the scarred man's frustration. Dabi is still waiting, pen poised over a little black notebook that came out of nowhere. Sighing, he turns to the burned man and very slowly starts again. Hypothetically, if I were to kill Endeavor, I would freeze 200 milligrams of nitroglycerin into ice cubes and mix it with sweet rum. And since Endeavor has a fire quirk hypothetically, he would have to drink it slower, and the nitroglycerin would stop his heart and make it look, hypothetically, like a heart attack. Izuku instructs slowly, ignoring Shigaraki's bewildered expression. Are you seriously giving us the perfect way to kill Endeavor? Shigaraki manages to get out, sounding so confused that the green-haired boy takes pity on him. If I did, it would be because he's scum that deserves to be curb-stomped off of the face of the earth. Izuku responds airily. He's walking under a bridge when he sees it. It's the weekend, just after sunset, and the street lamps barely illuminate the crumpled form. Blood pools out from the person, and Izuku can already tell they aren't going to make it. Quietly, he approaches them, taking note of their shoeless feet. He tries not to think too hard about what that signifies as he moves forwards. Their hand is outstretched at an awkward angle, and their eyes are open and oddly panicked as they watch him. They're probably worried I have a healing quirk. His stomach twists uncomfortably, and he kneels down beside them, ignoring the blood pooling at his feet. May you rest peacefully in whatever afterlife there may be. May the words of those who hurt you wash off of your skin, and may the wounds they gave you heal. I hope that you never know suffering again. He murmurs, the words spilling from his lips like a prayer. There's surprise in their eyes, but it quickly morphs into quiet gratefulness. He smiles, but they're gone. The smile drops, and the knot in his stomach grows tighter. After notifying the police of the body, he wanders away from the bridge, staring at the contacts in his phone. His mom is right out. She's currently enjoying her first vacation since he was born. Yagi is probably working on lesson plans. Todoroki doesn't need any more bullshit in his life. Anyone from school is out. So that leaves. Quietly, he hits Shigaraki's number and waits. It picks up on the third ring, and Shigaraki seems somewhat annoyed. You could have just texted me. What's up? Can you? He chokes when he sees the blood on his shoes. The villain notices something is wrong though, because he sounds less harsh the next time he talks. Where are you? He whispers the address to Shigaraki, who hangs up promptly. Mechanically, he puts his phone into his pocket and stares at his shoes, watching the blood gleam in the dim light. A hand on his shoulder guides him into mist, sounds that might be words coming from somewhere far away. Distantly, he notices someone squeezing his shoulder and moving him onto something soft. He wraps his arms around himself, blinking and trying to get his bearings, trying to hear words. It doesn't work. Tears don't come. Izuku's. Tears never come in the face of tragedy anymore, he's far too used to it. Instead, he feels mind-numbingly cold. Did you forget? He doesn't want to feel cold. Fingernails dig into his palms, and blood drops through his fingertips, just like the blood from the body, the same blood that's on his shoes. A gloved hand forces him to stop digging, and slowly, everything sharpens. Blinking, he looks over to Shigaraki, who stares at him more intensely than usual. It's dark, and he's back in the room where he was when he stitched Toga up. The sheets are soft, and dim light comes from a computer on a desk. Shigaraki is right beside him, bony arm pressed against his own. Twice is sitting in the chair, watching them with concern. Hey kiddo. You were really out of it for a while there. You want to call your mom and let her know what's going on. For once, Twice doesn't contradict himself. It's oddly jarring. She's on a weekend trip. Izuku responds dully. Neither of them comments on it, and he doesn't really have the energy to do much besides lean more against Shigaraki, resting his head on the man's shoulder. The blue-haired man stiffens, but doesn't move away, and Twice slips beside him, gently rubbing circles on his back. It's grounding, and keeps him from slipping away into his thoughts. Breathing even, he closes his eyes, relaxing and drinking in the familiar smells and sounds. Do you know what happened to Izuku? He looked pretty upset. Toga frowns, watching the door where the three people disappeared 30 minutes ago. I'm not sure, but Twice can probably handle it. Magna reassures the younger girl, gently patting her hand. Toga's frown slowly melts away into a small smile, and she turns back to her newly found knife. Hopefully, she could show Izuku her newest weapon when he felt better. It's dark. Clouds of black smoke curl around him, obscuring his body and surroundings from view. The smoke clears a little, revealing 7 figures standing in a row. Their backs are to him, and their figures are partially hidden by smoke. Behind them, there are 2 blurry figures doing something. He tries to step forwards, but he's rooted in place. Frustrated, he opens his mouth to cry out. His arm reaches out, covered in smoke, trying to reach the figures. As if hearing his call, they turn to face him. They all range in age and appearance, but in place of eyes, there are glowing lights. Dimly, he recognizes them. They're from the sports festival, when Shinso. The lights fixate on him, making it hard to think, hard to breathe, and they all rush forwards, arms outstretched too. Get away! Hands clasp his forearms, holding him in place. Blurry shapes move in front of him, and warm light comes from somewhere above him. Oku. Izuku. He can't breathe. Freak. Loser. Waste of space. There. Be realistic. Take a swan dive off of the... Izuku. A hand grabs his own, squeezing. The sensation grounds him, chasing away the voices and the feeling of being suffocated. For air, the pressure on his chest suddenly gone. As he breathes, another hand gently rests on his shoulder, not pinning him in place, rather, letting him know they're there. It takes several minutes for him to realize that Shigaraki and Twice are here too, and both are holding his arm and shoulder, respectively. The pressure from their hands is a welcome distraction from the thoughts of last night. "Hey!" he croaks out, voice rough. Red eyes focus on Izuku with false annoyance, and Shigaraki releases his hand with a scoff. Absently, Izuku notes the villain's lack of gloves and the dust that currently covers them and the bed. He must have disintegrated them. Twice's usual gray and black spandex is replaced by a stained white tank top and a pair of red sweatpants. The mask remains. Figured. That was quite the wake-up call you gave us. Do you want to talk about it? You look like shit. Go take a shower and leave us alone. That I'm okay. Ida don't want to talk about yet, though. The two men nod, and the room falls silent once more. Zuku! Toga cheers when she sees the green-haired boy enter the room. Izuku smiles, more subdued than usual, but a far cry from the blank expression he wore last night. The other League members watch the interaction, and subtly relaxing when they see the green-haired boy's smile. Himiko, how are you? Conversion flows very easily with the blonde girl, and by the time Kurogyari brings in breakfast, he successfully pushes the memories of the part 24 hours into a deep, dark corner of his mind. The next time he goes to the League's hideout, he has two gifts. Quietly, he hands the first gift, a pair of bright red gloves, to Shigaraki. Upon receiving a confused look, he smiles and explains. You disintegrated the other ones last time. Plus, you always wear black. It'll look cool. Shigaraki nods, muttering something about them being the right shade of red to hide blood. The green-haired boy chooses to ignore it. The next gift was chosen on instinct while he was searching for books on stress-relieving exercises in a 2 a.m. shopping spree brought on by his recent nightmares. It doesn't even really make sense, considering how little he knows about the person getting this gift, but something told him by it. Quietly, he approaches the bar, hands securely in his pocket as he looked up at the misty man. The other occupants of the bar perk up when Izuku holds a hand up to Kurogyari, palm up. Glowing yellow eyes narrow, and the mist leans over to peer at the offering. After a moment, Kurogyari lets out something that sounds suspiciously like a sniffle and takes the object from Izuku's hand. They double-take when Kurogyari fastens a silver cat pin with black gems for eyes to his vest, then reaches out and ruffles Izuku's green hair. I appreciate it, Izuku. How did you know I like cats? Green eyes glimmer with satisfaction as a smile steals across the short boy's face. Just a feeling. Deku, are you feeling okay? Urarka's usually cheerful voice lowered on worry. Izuku jumps, having completely zoned out since Ida had started his daily lecture on proper nutrition. All three of his friends watch him as he scrambles to look less like a zombie and more like a hero student. I'm fine. He smiles at them as reassuringly as possible. Izuku is not, in fact, fine. He hasn't gotten a proper 8 hours of sleep since he'd spent the night with the League 2 weeks ago, having been violently ejected from sleep by lunging figures nightly. He manages to catch 40-minute naps here and there, but they're almost always interrupted by blood pooling around his shoes or another person waking him up. In short, he's exhausted, and having to be mentally present for lunch is too much to ask from him today, much less trying to ward off his friend's concern. Are you sure? I agree with you, Raraka, you do not look fine. Do you need one of us to escort you to recovery, girl? Ida joins in, hands chopping the air as vigorously as usual. Absolutely not. The heroine's time is a precious resource, and he won't waste it because he can't handle his quirk. He'd already done so once, and she was upset enough that he can't go to her for broken bones anymore. I'm fine. He repeats, smile turning a little strained. His body language screams, drop it, and his friends oblige, albeit with worried looks. Dabi walks into the room, takes one look at Izuku, and decides to start running his mouth. You look like sheet. As blunt as ever. Thanks. Izuku deadpants, not in the mood to deal with the burned man's snarky bullshit. Magna sets down her fluorescent blue drink on the counter and eyes him and his spread of notes with mild worry. Dear, how long has it been since you slept properly? She sounds concerned. It's nice, but Izuku doesn't need concern right now, he needs answers. He's been reading and copying down every relevant piece of information on a Quirk Help subforum for hours now, and he's found no solutions to help with his reoccurring nightmares. Dimen the old one for all users. 8 generations and no one thought to write down some sort of guidelines for this all-powerful quirk? Or find someone with a longevity quirk and have them guide the new generations? Izuku groans, slamming his head against the wooden bar. Papers flutter to the floor as the 9th holder wonders not for the first time if One for All hates him. Death by sleep deprivation is unlikely, but full-blown insanity is not. Is One for All trying to drive him crazy so that All Might will take it back? Or is it a petty beach that wants to punish him for hanging out with villains? Misty hands appear in his vision, nearly placing pieces of paper into stacks, and Magna's earlier question pops back into his head. A couple weeks. Don't worry, I'm not insane yet, just ready to Texas smash myself in the face and go into a coma to actually get a peaceful night's rest. Would you actually do that? It seems a little far to go for something stupid like sleep. Shigaraki asks offhandedly, eyes focused on his game. It seems like a good option right now. The green-haired boy responds, shooting Kurogiri a grateful look for the now neat stack of papers to his left. The misty man merely nods in acknowledgement, and with that, Izuku turns back to his webpage. Well, if worst comes to worst, I'll just talk to All Might and pray he's had a similar experience and that he can help me. It takes another near sleepless week for Izuku to give up and track down All Might outside of class. All Might, we need to talk. The man pulls him into a nearby break room and deflates with a spray of blood. What seems to be the issue, young Midoriya? You look rather frazzled. Izuku turns over his words in his mind, trying to force his brain to think of a polite way to say this. I've been having issues sleeping because of a very repetitive dream of 7 people with glowing eyes lunging at me as if to attack me. He explains as concisely as possible. Please have had a similar experience. Please have had a similar experience. All Might did a double take, non-existent eyebrows raising. Please, please, please. I'm pretty sure they're the same people I saw at the sports festival. And I need to go to sleep, so can you please tell me how to fix this? He practically begs the blond man, limbs feeling heavy. Said man's eyebrows furrow as he takes in his successor, who looks more disheveled than usual. Unfortunately, there isn't much he can do to help the young man, since he's never experienced anything like this before. I'm sorry, young Midoriya, I really don't know anything about this phenomenon. I don't understand why One for All would act in a way that is detrimental to your health. Of course you haven't. Tears of frustration prick Izuku's eyes, which he doesn't bother to hide as he stares at the ground. A question dances on the top of his tongue, the one that has been haunting him since this entire issue started. Why not does One for All hate me because I was quirkless? The green-haired boy asks, voice full of frustration. All Might is at a loss. He really didn't think handing over One for All would cause so many issues for his successor, but between this and the bone breaking he was starting to regret causing so much trouble for the earnest, hard-working boy. Sighing, he placed a hand on the Izuku's shoulder to offer some semblance of comfort. No, my boy. I too was quirkless, and it simply manifested as a strength augmentation for me. I believed it would manifest in a similar manner for you. And while it was clear that my many years with the quirk have caused a large power buildup, I didn't predict it showing you visions. Izuku blue screens. All Might was quirkless? Some small part of his barely awake brain fixates on that. All Might was quirkless. In his extensive research on All Might, there was never any mention of a charity for the quirkless. For orphanages, for disadvantaged people, but not the quirkless. No acknowledgement of their existence at all. All Might has been a hero for almost 4 decades, and he just never thought of it? Or did he forget? His words from the rooftop ring through his head. I cannot say someone without power can be a hero. It's nice to dream, but you must be realistic, young man. Dimly he can hear All Might talking, but he can't make out the words. It had been a long time. Could it be that the treatment was different back then? Of course it was. Because when All Might appeared, he started cementing society's expectations and biases in a world of quirks. general crime rates went down, but hate crimes and discrimination towards those who didn't fit their mold, those with mutation quirks, those with mental quirks, those with scarily destructive quirks, and the quirkless, the quirkless skyrocketed. He knew. He'd seen the statistics, even compared them with All Might's rise to fame. The symbol of peace made people feel safe enough to commit murder and constantly others into the label of villains and wastes of space. Because they aren't doing society anything but harm in the long run. And All Might is oblivious to it all. The hand squeezes his shoulder, mercilessly tossing him back to his middle school classroom. If you want to be a hero so badly, why don't you take a swan dive off of the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life? His breath catches and he slaps the arm off of his shoulder. Distantly, he hears someone calling him, but he ignores it, sprinting through the hallways and out the doors, then the front gate, before hopping onto a train. Somehow, he makes it home. His mother isn't there, having taken an afternoon shift. She'd started working again once he'd gotten into UA, once he'd gotten a quirk, and seemed happier for it. Mechanically, he sets his backpack onto his bed and takes off his uniform, replacing it with sweatpants and a short-sleeved shirt. The fog over his mind clears slightly at the familiarity of the room, but All Might's eyes bore down on him from the posters, making him feel sick. A sudden thought strikes him. All Might knows where I live. And after Izuku just ran out of school during lunch break, he's bound to come after him, small form be Dmed. His chest tightens as he imagines even being near the man right now. He needs to get away from here and fast. Breath coming in short gasps, he grabs a black backpack and shoves a change of clothes into it, along with a blank notebook, a charger, and a case of pencils. Dashing to the bathroom, he puts his toothbrush into it. He sends out a text to Shigaraki with coordinates and a time estimate before powering off the phone and stuffing it into his pocket. He doesn't want to be found. Finally, he shoves black sneakers onto his feet and pulls on a surgical mask, dashing out the front door and hopping onto another train. He rides it to the coordinates, then rests on a park bench, black backpack secure in his arms as he stares at the clear sky. It isn't fitting for his current jumbled mood. The hell is going on, Izuku? I thought you were supposed to be in that stupid but hero school right now. Shigaraki rasped somewhere to his left. The green-haired boy turns to see Shigaraki in civilian clothes, looking annoyed. He breathes out a sigh of relief at that, and stands up, clutching his bag tightly. Can I stay with you for a few days? The request makes Shigaraki's eyes narrow, and he takes a little closer look at the other boy. His hands are shaking slightly, and his feet are planted defensively. His pupils are dilated, so much so that it's hard to see the green in his eyes. There are heavy bags under his eyes, too. His breathing is shaky as he waits, and his lips are tightly pressed together, almost bloodless as his eyes dart around. Add in his unusual paleness, and Shigaraki would say he's scared. But of what? He's a hero student, but not a normal one. A normal hero student wouldn't ask to stay with villains, and they wouldn't carry so many scars on their body, and they wouldn't have the talent to find so many loopholes in the law and use them to his advantage. The blue-haired man sighs, then grabs Izuku's wrist. Fine. But I want an explanation. They delve deeper into the park, disappearing into the trees and then into purple mist. Izuku lets out a sigh of relief when he sees the bar. Thankfully, the room is empty save Kurogyari, so no one will question why he's here in the middle of the afternoon on a school day. Shigaraki drops his wrist, watching the boy visibly relax at the sight of the familiar room. The bartender watches too, somewhat confused by this entire situation. Well, brat? Why the hell are you skipping school? If this is some stupid teenage rebellion, I'll have Kurogyari drop your butt into the ocean. The scarred man threatens, pointing to Kurogyari, who looks disgruntled by the call-out. The green-eyed boy nods in understanding, eyes slightly glassy as he stares at a point past Shigaraki's head, trying to figure out how to explain this situation. The person I made a deal with. He trails off at the frustration in Shigaraki's eyes. That I found out some things about him, and he knows where I live. I can't talk to him, not after Izuku cuts himself off, choking on air at the words that ring in his ears. Exhaustion weighs down his every step, and he'd accepted a volatile quirk from someone completely oblivious to the issues he's caused society. And now said quirk is hounding him out of his sleep. When did everything go wrong? Izuku runs a hand through his hair, tugging at the ends harshly as he tries not to let us thoughts overwhelm him. The villains watch the hero student's face crumple, his breathing coming in shorter and shorter as he curls in on himself. Shigaraki, unused to seeing anything but calm or cheerfulness from the student, is frozen in place by confusion. Kurogyari, on the other hand, quickly moved forwards, taking the student's hands out of his hair and gently placing them on his chest. Izuku, can you hear me? Breathe with me, okay? In and out. Through his panic, he hears Kurogyari speak and does his best to follow along, tears pricking his eyes. After a couple minutes, Izuku's breathing back to normal, albeit shaky. I am sorry, I panicked and I didn't know where else to go, and I promise I won't get in the way. It's just he knows where I live and I can't. He cuts himself off, carefully releasing his hold from Kurogyari's suit vest and placing his hands at his side. Sorry. Izuku looks to the stained wooden floor, embarrassed by the tears that prick his eyes. You can stay. Just stop looking like a freaking kicked puppy before the rest of the league is on my butt for making you cry. Shigaraki huffs are the last part, but the other two still hear him. Kurogyari chuckles under his breath, then gently places a hand on Izuku's shoulder. I assume you know where the spare room is by now. Why don't you go set your things in there? The misty man gently encourages. Izuku nods, relieved at their acceptance of his impromptu stay. Zuku, you're here. Toga squeals and hurls herself onto his lap, a big grin on her face. She does this often enough that he's used to the physical contact, though he knows better than to not be on guard. Toga's hugs are always punctuated by knives far too close to his vitals. Izuku smiles and deflects her knife to his gut, carefully wrapping his arms around the girl in greeting. Hey Himiko! Is that the bush? Here on a school night? Naughty boy. Magna says, plopping herself down in the bar stool beside him. Hey kiddo. Goodbye, brat. Hi Magnus. How was your day? They proceed to tell him about a fight they'd gotten into where Twice panicked and chucked a shaken soda can at the feet of two people trying to pin Toga down and effectively blinded both of them. Toga cackles about the surprised looks on the people's faces, and Magna laughs as she recounts Twice's apologies to said people. Both lament over the fact that they didn't take pictures, and by the end of it, Izuku feels the tension leave his body. This is what he wants. Easy conversation, funny stories, and laughter. No destiny or legacy or symbol or all might was quirkless. It's perfect. Kurogyari, do you need help with anything? Izuku peeks through the kitchen doors warily. The last time Twice tried to enter the kitchen, he was nearly decapitated by knives falling from portals in the ceiling. Most of the league steer clear of the kitchen while Kurogyari is cooking. Though, it's probably best for everyone involved. As far as Izuku can tell, the Misty Man is a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to food and drink preparation. Still, he's not going to sit around uselessly while he's staying here. That would be impolite. I'm alright. Kurogyari cuts himself off when he realizes who he's talking to. Slowly, he turns around, carefully eyeing the green-haired child with something akin to hope blossoming in his chest. Could it be a competent kitchen assistant? Unaware of Kurogyari's thoughts, sweat drips down Izuku's back at the Misty Man's scrutiny. Was he going to get decapitated? Dropped into the ocean? Or worse? There are pre-washed vegetables on the cutting board. Wash your hands, then cut them evenly. Kurogyari commands, pointing towards the countertop. He will observe closely. If the boy has no aptitude in the kitchen, then he can always teleport him to the couch. The green-haired boy nods, then heads over to the sink and washes his hands thoroughly, internally freaking out about Kurogyari's command and marveling his still-living yet-to-be-threatened status. It takes a couple seconds for him to get used to the unfamiliar knife, but once he does, he cuts up the vegetables neatly and efficiently. Years of cooking with and for his overly anxious mother led to him picking up her extremely efficient cooking habits. I'm done. The Misty Man nearly sobs when he sees the nearly sliced vegetables organized in well-separated piles across the board. Tamura could never. Not with his disintegration quirk and constant hypervigilance to avoid accidentally destroying something important. Not that he'd go anywhere near the kitchen. He'd learned his lesson after he disintegrated one of Kurojire's good pans at the tender age of 10. It had taken Sensei a week and the promise of better cooking where to calm him down. As for the rest of the league, they were either disasters or didn't want to help him. The one time Toga used the kitchen had led to half the knives missing, burned water, and blood splatters all over the walls. He asked her to make tea. Needless to say, he nearly warped her to another country after that incident, and she gained a healthy fear of the misty man. "Kurojire, are you okay?" Izuku asks, hesitantly. "I'm fine. Would you rinse the meat and cutting it up as well?" Kurojire asks. If he could cry, he would. He flickers happily, non-existent lips twitching upwards as he watches the green-haired boy go about the task with ease. Finally, someone competent and not intent on destroying his kitchen and his sanity. Dinner was eaten quickly, and everyone disappeared just as quickly afterwards. After doing the dishes, Izuku grabbed his notebook and settled in the main bar area, content to perfect his sketch of a new hero and listen to Shigaraki and Spinner's gaming session. They're the only ones in the room, Kurojire having disappeared to God knows where after the kitchen was properly cleaned. Honestly, Izuku doesn't blame him. Gaming sessions can get violent. Not physically, but the two villains' colorful verbal insults were enough to leave anyone cringing from the imagery. The sound of them arguing is familiar enough to have him on the edge of dozing, his pencil slowing to a stop as his eyelids slide shut. He doesn't fight it, hoping tonight will be the night the seven figures leave him alone. They turn on him. A strong sense of déjà vu hits him as he watches the figure lunge at him. Behind them, two figures stand still, as if frozen in place. Determination fills him as he stares down the charging figures. He's going to get a good night's sleep, one for all and all might be Dmed. "Stop it!" He screams into the void, his frustration bleeding into his voice as he pushes the closest figure away from himself. Their glowing eye sockets flare bright red, and Izuku is plunged into a new scene. Crumbling buildings tower over him. Rubble rests at a pair of black-booted feet, and small fires and puddles of water litter the formerly pristine street. A street lamp creaks and sways unstably in the breeze, flickering on and off. Smoke clouds the air, obscuring the sky. In the distance, police sirens wail, and the scuffle of fighting can be heard. A closer look reveals a pool of blood near the boots. But the boots don't move, and not Izuku. It's someone else, someone else's body, someone else's life grips the objects in their hands. Said objects seem to be molded to their hands, the cloth wrappings softened and pliable under their calloused hands. The weight feels like a weapon, but there's no way to confirm it, because a loud, intelligible shout sends them running, their side twinging with pain. But it isn't Izuku's pain. This feels different from the burns and cuts and broken bones leaping over rubble and ducking into a nearby alleyway. They pause to rest, about to put away the objects in their hands, but something stops them. They stare into the shadows of the alleyway, eyes picking out irregularities in the darkness. That was faster than expected. Good job, thief. The person not Izuku, but he feels his lip lifting accordingly, snarls at the white-haired businessman. Gray eyes meet his own, and they glare at him. "I'm not a thief, you a-hole." The voice is androgynous, and the objects in their hands swords, Izuku realizes raise up, the cold metal glinting as they slide into a fighting stance. What else do I call the person who took the power that kept my little brother alive? The snarl sharpens, and incredulous anger bubbles up in their chest. At what cost? Your brother never wanted a power, and you forced it on him because of your own selfish desire to prolong his suffering. The white-haired man's face twists into a sneer, and the air grows heavier, making it hard to move. You know nothing. A hand extends, and Izuku's world explodes. Izuku jolts up, one for all crackling and charging the air with energy. Warm liquid runs down his face and neck, and he feels something metallic bubbling up in his throat. Holy shit, he's bleeding. Is he dying? His vision comes into focus, and he spots Spinner hovering over him with a horrified expression. Shigaraki is staring at him from the couch, looking distressed. In the background, the T.V flickers, the save screen for an unfamiliar game decorating the screen. Dimly, he touches the liquid on his face and brings it to his face. It's sticky and dark, and the smell alone lets him know it's blood. That's new. Spinner looks worried, but Izuku ignores him, standing up and grabbing his notebook, mind whirling from his dream? Experience? Izuku. Sit down, you're bleeding a lot. What's going on? Spinner sets a heavy hand onto his shoulder, and his burn scar twinges in response. Blankly, the green-haired boy stares at the villain. Blood. Right, there's a lot of blood. He needs to clean that up. Then he can deal with whatever that was. He lifts up the hem of his shirt, wiping up his nose first, then his neck as he examined the beanbag he was on. From what he can tell, there's no blood on it. But that would be a pain to clean. Izuku, seriously, you're freaking me out, dude. 1 minute you were napping, the next you were bleeding and convulsing, and then you woke up with your quirk activated. What happened? He looks at Spinner. Then over at Shigaraki. They're concerned. For him. That's new. No one was ever really concerned with him, just his fragility. That I don't know. He frowns, looking down at the bloody shirt hem in his hand. One for all. Something is going on inside it. Maybe it isn't rebelling against a quirkless owner like he originally thought. But he's reacting differently to One for All, so much so that it might as well be a different quirk from the one that All Might described. He's on his own here. First breaking bones, now this. Can I go a month without a quirk crisis? Frustrated tears prick at his eyes, and he glares at the floor. I don't know. The hand lightly squeezes his shoulder, grounding him. Hey, it's okay. The bleeding looks like it stopped, so why don't you go clean up? Come back after you're done, we can keep an eye on you and see if it happens again. Who knows? It might be someone's quirk. Numbly, Izuku nods and turns to go. There's not much he can do right now, but washing off the blood seems like a good start. After he washes off the blood and changes into a new shirt, he trudged back to the bar, so exhausted that he's past heavy eyelids. Spinner and Shigaraki are on the couch, and the lizard man moves over, patting the space in between them expectantly. Izuku obliges, wedging himself between the villains and leaning back on the soft cushions, wrapping his scarred arms around his knees and staring at the screen. Neither man comments, and both go back to playing the game, albeit a little quieter and with the occasional sidelong glance. His limbs feel heavy, and the T.V is too bright, forcing him to close his eyes. The faint sound of gaming music lulls him into darkness, and for the first time in weeks, Izuku sleeps peacefully. I'm going to get a slushie. Wanna come, Izuku? Toga leans over his shoulder, peering at his notebook. Izuku blinks and looks over at her skeptically. Himiko, I'm officially missing. Even if I'm plain looking, going outside is testing my luck. Yellow eyes narrow, and she pouts, slumping against his arm. Izuku. It'll be quick, I promise. Izuku frowns, looking down at his notebook, then back at Toga. This is a really bad idea, but he doesn't want to say no. Getting some fresh air would be nice. What if I give you a disguise? Will you come then? The green-haired boy sighs, then nods. Toga lights up, and he's tugged away from his notebook and into her room. Himiko, why did you give me a tank top? Toga turns around, surveying him. A dark look flits over her features, but it's quickly replaced by joy. Oh my god, you look so cute. She squeals. He shifts, a little uncomfortable with his scars being out in the open like this. Usually, t-shirts and long-sleeved compression shirts hide the extensive scarring on his back and arms, but the black tank top leaves a lot on display. Still, it's a good disguise, mostly because he'd never wear something like this out in public. Sighing, he resists the urge to comb a hand through his now gelled back hair. The gel had some sort of tint in it, so his hair looked more black than green now. Add in tight jeans and more eyeliner than he would ever dare attempt to put on, and he's basically unrecognizable. Thanks, Himiko. Doesn't this seem excessive for a shushi, though? Nope. The spot we're going to is in another district, so you'll have to look really different. She says, then grabs his hand and opens her door, pulling him out into the hallway. Izuku doesn't resist, allowing himself to be led back to the main bar area. You have money to buy this stuff, right? Let's go. Fortunately, the bar is empty, save Kurogiri, whose place at the bar is semi-permanent, and they leave quickly. The walk to the place with Shushi's proves to be eventful, especially since Toga had taken it upon herself to attempt to get them into multiple dangerous situations. He pulls her away each time, gently redirecting her towards their original destination. The entire time, he keeps an eye on patrolling heroes and passing cop cars, cataloging the people that pass them. Eventually, they make it to a neon green and yellow decorated storefront, labeled with an English name that Izuku can't be bothered to read. Toga is practically buzzing with excitement, and the green-haired boy is quickly dragged inside, much to his amusement. The cool air of the shop smacks him in the face, and he shivers. Such strong air conditioning. Unbothered, the blonde-haired girl drags him straight to the back, ignoring the aisles with brightly colored bags of chips and candy. They reach the back, facing a machine with a multitude of glowing lights and chugging liquid inside. A humming noise comes from it, and the glowing sign pronounces it, the Shushi machine. In English. Toga seems unfazed, and grabs a cup and straw from the stack beside the machine. Izuku follows suit, listening to her explanation of what the drink is, how many flavors she's going to get, 7, which seems excessive, but whatever, and if he likes wild cherry or frosty berry. Better, who came up with these names? In the end, he decides to get the cherry and the lime mixed together. It tastes pretty good, and despite Toga's insistence on him getting another flavor, they make it up to the counter. The cashier is a person with a pair of elegant-looking horns protruding from their massive curls, and they look like their eyes have been plastered open. Curiously, he looks at the odd assortment of old card games on a display case beside them. A red and black box catches his eye, and he peers at it. "Hey Himiko, do you think anyone would want to play a card game?" Toga looks over at the display case, her eyes alight with mischief as she looks over at him. "Totally! Which one do you have in mind?" "What about Uno? I read online it was pretty popular in the pre-Quirk era." "How much is it?" Toga turns and asks the cashier. They pay and leave, the new card game in Izuku's back pocket and Toga skipping a couple of steps ahead of him. Something nags at the back of his mind, telling him that something is going to go wrong, but he can't quite place what it is. Ahead of him, Toga giggles, excited for the chaos that will soon befall the poor, unfortunate souls that make up the League of Villains. "I'm just saying, theoretically, Shigaraki could disintegrate something with one finger. Whether or not it's a practice thing or a psychological thing isn't the issue. All people with 5-finger activated quirks could technically use one finger to activate says quirk if they were under enough stress that their body believed it was a life or death scenario. Arbitrarily cutting of one of his fingers won't trick his body into thinking it needs to evolve. It would need to be a carefully crafted simulation. Oh, hi Shigaraki. That would bring up his adrenaline levels." Izuku holds open the door for Toga, vaguely gesturing with his cup. "Yeah, but if he thought somebody was betraying him, wouldn't that be enough adrenaline or whatever? So if I just jumped him while he was asleep?" Toga waves her knife in Shigaraki's direction as she sets her almost empty drink on the bar. He shakes his head, taking another sip of his drink. "No, it would need to be a situation where he actually believes he'd die. Quirks are like biological failsafes, a last resort of your body to protect yourself. So they only evolve or adapt in extreme stress situations. That's why most civilians never discover additional features to their quirks until they have children. Besides, you just plan to jump him right in front of him, so he'll be on guard around you now." Toga nods, her fingers twirling her current favorite knife, a deep red, bejeweled handle and 4-inch long blade that could flip in and out in circles. Shigaraki is looking at them now, along with Kurogyuri and Dabi, but the green-haired boy ignores them, taking a thoughtful sip of his drink. There's some pretty realistic VR headsets nowadays, but the issue would be where he'd be, because his quirk is already strong enough that if it were to evolve, he would probably take at least a mile of city block with it, and that would bring the heroes down on his head. "What the F dash dot?" Shigaraki's raspy voice snaps him out of analyzing mode. "Oh, hi. Me and Himiko went out for slushies." He waves awkwardly, then takes another sip of his drink, avoiding Shigaraki's incredulous look. Toga giggles, her knife glinting as she twirls it and grins at Shigaraki, who glares at her. What did you do to him? Nothing. Izuku blinks, looking in between the two with confusion. Do you mean my disguise? Dabi's lips twitch, and Toga grins wider as Shigaraki's glare worsens. He frowns, looking in between the tense occupants of the bar. You look emo, Dabi says, a smirk on his burned face. I asked Himiko to dress me like you. Izuku shrugs, taking another sip of his drink as Shigaraki cackles, easing the tension in the room. Insulting Dabi always puts him in a better mood. Dabi huffs something close to a laugh, and Toga snaps her knife closed and smiles at him. Kurogiri lets put a noise that sounds suspiciously like a sigh of relief. Smiling, he picks up his notebook from where he left it. He turns to leave, then remembers their spur-of-the-moment purchase. By the way, have any of you heard of Uno? Behind the ominous black T.V, a 200-year-old man chokes on his water. Isn't that the Spanish word for cat or something? Dabi picks at a loose staple on his face. No, it's Spanish for red, damas. Is it a game or something? Shigaraki asks, gloved fingers scratching his scarred neck. Yeah, it's a card game from the pre-Quark era. We bought a deck while we were out. Wanna play? Toga asks, a mischievous smile on his face. A card game sounds splendid. What are the rules? Mr. Compress appears out of thin air, making everyone jump. I don't know yet. I think there's instructions inside. I don't want to play with Compress, he always cheats at card games. Shigaraki whines, flopping back onto the couch. Dabi nods his head in agreement. Mr. Compress presses a gloved hand to his black vest. I'm hurt, gentlemen. When have I ever cheated? Every time. Dabi and Shigaraki groan in unison, then shoot glares at each other. Toga just grins. Well, he doesn't know the rules of the game, so he technically shouldn't be able to cheat. Besides, I'm pretty sure you need at least 4 players for this, so why don't we play one round and see how it goes? +4 a hole. Dabi smirks. I only had 2 cards left UD-. Shigaraki howls, slamming his fist down in the wood floor violently. Kurogiri sighs and looks down at his cards, waiting for his charge's temper tantrum to be over so he could go have turn. Mr. Compress, give me the wild cards. Izuku sighs, holding his hand out to the older man with a tired expression. I'm sorry. Mr. Compress asks politely, trying to bluff. I've seen you marbling them for the past 3 rounds. Please give them back to me so I can reshuffle the deck. He keeps his hand out, waiting. After a long moment of silence, Mr. Compress pulls out a handfuls of marbles from his vest pocket and hands them to Izuku. How did he do that? No idea. I told you he'd cheat. What are you playing? Looks boring. I've never seen that card game before. Several sets of eyes turn on the newcomers, and Izuku sighs and starts shuffling again. Apparently, he's the only trustworthy person playing, so he'd become the permanent dealer at everyone's insistence. Make yourselves comfortable. Kurogiri, please explain the rules to them. Why don't we spice this up? Every time a draw 4 pile starts, the person who can't add to it can either draw cards or pick a dare from the person to their left. Magna suggests as she watches Twice despair as he painstakingly draws 36 cards from the deck. He'd put down a draw 4 card and everyone else had 1 too, leaving him to face the full wrath of karma. Everyone nods along, and Izuku sighs. I have a feeling this is going to go badly. I dare you to give me your most expensive bottle of alcohol. Dabi smirks at Kurogiri, whose glowing eyes narrow at the burned man. I will take the 16 cards. I dare you to. Izuku trails off, peering at Spinner, who looks nonplussed by his fate. Get on with it. Shigaraki whines, impatiently tapping his foot on the floor. Write a love letter to Stain and send it after this game is over. Spinner blanches as much as a lizard can blanch a look of horrified embarrassment on his scaly face. Dabi grins, Twice Wolf whistles and Magna pats the lizard man on the back sympathetically. Shigaraki rolls his eyes, and Toga giggles. I'll help you. Don't worry, I do it all the time. She says, and Spinner looks like he wants to melt into the floor. I choose the cards. I dare you to take a shot. Go drown yourself in alcohol. Mr. Compress sighs and looks over to Kurogyari. The misty man nods and creates a portal, sticking his hand through it and quickly making the shot and passing it to Compress. The man lifts up his mask, revealing another black mask underneath with a hole for his mouth and throws his head back, drinking it all in one gulp. Izuku winces, but Compress is already setting the glass down and fixing his mask. I dare you to play the rest of the round upside down. Toga says cheerfully, grinning at him. At least she didn't ask me to take off my shirt again. He looks at his lone card. Then at the stack of 3 draw 4s. Okay. Sighing, he sets his card down on the floor, then twists his body into a handstand. Then he grabs his card, holding it at an angle so Toga and Spinner can't see it. He keeps his feet tucked in so he doesn't accidentally hit someone and smiles. Good. Her eyes sparkle, and he hears someone mutter, "What do they feed that kid?" as she grins. Perfect. I dare you to remove all knives from your person and refrain from attacking anyone for the rest of the evening. Kurogyari says, making Toga groan. You're no fun. I dare you to let Toga put you in a dress. Shigaraki crows gleefully, pointing at Dabi. Dabi thinks about it for a minute, then shrugs. How bad can it be? He returns 15 minutes later in a neon pink tutu held up by bright yellow suspenders and his usual combat boots. His chest is bare, and he looks exhausted as he sits down beside a hysterical Shigaraki. I'll take the cards next time. Twice, dear. Please pick the cards or the dare. Magna says, looking somewhat regretful of her decision to give him a dare at all. I'm going to do the dare. I'm doing the cards. Everyone sighs. This is going to take a while. Uno! Shigaraki shrieks, pointing at Dabi's card. The game pauses, and everyone looks over at the villain. Ha! He didn't say Uno and I did, so he has to draw 2 cards. Shigaraki says with a triumphant smile. Izuku grabs the page of rules, eyes flicking over the words. After a minute he sighs. Dabi, draw 2 cards. Crusty a-hole. Dabi snarks, shooting the other man an annoyed look. Let me throw knives at you. Kurogyari took away your knives. Do something cool. Izuku thinks for a minute, then stands up and grabs the open bottle from the bar top. Shots are a popular dare choice, and everyone has had at least 2 by now, much to Kurogyari's chagrin, and puts it to his lips, chugging several mouthfuls with a straight face before setting it down. Demon, didn't know Golden Boy was a drinker. Dabi smirks. Alcohol is a good painkiller. Izuku shrugs and drops his last card on top of the deck. I win. F hell. I was 1 turn away from winning. Spinner groans, tossing his card to the floor with annoyance. Izuku, could you please sit in between Shigaraki and Dabi? I do not want to prevent a murder tonight. Kurogyari asks. By now, the alcohol is kicking in, and his head is fuzzy, but he nods and stands up, stumbling over, plopping down beside Shigaraki and leaning against his shoulder. To his credit, the blue-haired man doesn't throw a fit, just grumbles and wraps a hand around Izuku's shoulders. Properly stabilized, he looks down at his cards, tuning out Toga's whining at his relocation. I can see your cards, brat. And I can see you don't think I'm a brat. Help me out. Whatever. The round is won by Magna, who looks smug at Twice's despair. He'd forced her to choose between drinking a bottle of hot sauce and taking 20 cards a couple rounds ago. The cards are set down, and he reaches out for them and shuffles them, concentration shot as he starts dealing. Oi, you drunk? That was a lot of alcohol for a kid. Shigaraki pokes his cheek, making him giggle. I'm fine. Just buzzed. It's a relatively normal round, until Mr. Compress decides to set down a +4. Twice curses him out and sets down another, and everyone follows suit until it gets to him. He doesn't have a +4 or a wild card, and he can feel Shigaraki's amusement. Don't want to draw cards. Shigaraki? The man hums, and Izuku peers down at his cards, trying to figure out if he can win this round. Not if I have to draw 28 cards. Tell me about one of your scars. Izuku purses his lips, thinking over it for a minute before deciding that winning is the most important thing right now. Okay, which one? Want this one? I'm gonna tell you about this one. Izuku points at his stomach, then realizes no one can see it. He huffs, then lifts up his shirt, revealing a pinkish web of scar tissue above his right hip. I forgot what it looked like. It matches, Izuku cackles and pokes it. It matches. Naiway, I got tossed all the way across the city, 'cause All Might wanted us to work together, it didn't work, he hates me, he almost. Izuku trails off, frowning before brightening again. Got tossed into the air, that was so fun. Felt like flying. And landed wrong. Stupid railing. Had to fix myself up again, and he almost undid all of my hard work. Oh, where was I? Right. Big explosions, and lots of screaming, couldn't hear it though. Everything was really cold and had trouble moving, and then a nice guy came and helped me out. Wait, that's not right. He frowns, peering at his stomach. Nah, there wasn't a guy. It was Recovery Girl. But only after we won. It was really cold and there was a lot of blood. Not as much as last time, though. She didn't look mad either, which was awesome. Have I asked for her autograph yet? When was this? Mr. Compress asks, his normally smooth voice sounding cracked under stress. Why is he stressed? Finals. Are you okay? You sound upset. Are you upset with me? Did I mess up again? I'm sorry. Can I? A hand lands in his hair, ruffling it. Blindly he leans into the touch, silenced. He's not upset at you. He's upset at you, eh? Shigaraki's raspy voice runs from above him, and he pouts, wrapping his arms around the man's thin waist. Oh, you have muscles. I was wondering how you moved so fast. You don't look very heavy though. Bet I can pick you up. Can I pick you up? Don't worry, I picked up fridges before. You'll be easy. Unless your quirk makes you heavier. I don't think it does. If anything, it would make you lighter. Cause of decay to hydrating molecule sata rapid and it's or skin so inodi our body, and I am rambling, aren't I? Sorry, you guys are just so nice. No one ever lets me ramble. Izuku trails off, then pulls Shigaraki closer to him, hugging him like a particularly homicidal, crusty teddy bear. A faint oof and muffled laughter makes him stiffen, to bury his face in Shigaraki's hoodie. It smells clean. Probably thanks to Kurogiri. Oh, Kurogiri. 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 How does your quirk work? Can you actually cut someone in half? Can you warp non-living things? What about small things? Can you store things inside your mist? What does your solid body look like? Oh my god, can you things stuck inside of it? Have you considered trapping someone in an extended loop where they fall forever until you make it stop? I bet you have. You're so responsible. Where you Verchef? Do you have a secondary memory quirk? You always remember my favorite Tesnex. He leans over, twisting his neck to look at the misty man, who flickers in surprise as he topples backwards into Dabi's lap. Shigaraki shouts and wiggles, but Izuku has him in a vice-like grip, despite his full attention being on Kurogiri. Underneath Izuku, Dabi catches Shigaraki's stray hand and shoots the blue-haired man a warning look. He rolls his eyes, but stops thrashing, relaxing in Izuku's grip and glaring at Dabi, who he's now nose-to-nose with, much to his annoyance. Meanwhile, Kurogiri is attempting to answer questions and decipher the green-haired boy's rambling, but is quickly becoming overwhelmed. Toga is watching everything with a glint in her eye, and the others shake their heads. Only Izuku could get away with using the head of the League of Villains as a teddy bear and not get dusted. Zuku! Zuku! Ask me about my quirk. She leans forwards, Uno forgotten. Himiko! How do Ishir blood intake work? Are you immune to bloodborne diseases? Do certain blood taste vetter tonathers? What's your favorite blood type? Do you tired off blood? A serious air hangs about the bar. Cards have been distributed, and each player is tense, wearing a serious expression on their face. Kurogiri looks over at the sleeping green-haired boy, then back at the League members, who look ready to murder each other, and sighs. Whoever wins this round gets to cuddle Izuku for the rest of the night. No takebacks, and no cheating, otherwise you will be disqualified. Dabi, start us off. Kurogiri won that round, because no one could be trusted when it came to Izuku cuddles. He spent the rest of the night with the green-haired boy draped over his lap, snoring softly. No one but him would ever know the permanent smile that fixed itself on his face, though the rest of the league could sense his good mood from their rooms and sulked about it in their own ways. The next morning, Izuku woke up on top of Kurogyari with a mild headache. He immediately jumped up and started apologizing, but the misty man just waved him off and asked him to help with breakfast. As he's dicing the meat, he notices Himiko walking in, her hair cascading down her shoulders and in roughly pink shorts and a tank top. He gives her a smile, which she returns, then plops down in a chair at the table right outside the kitchen, resting her chin on her arms with a pout. "Do you want anything to drink?" She perks up, giving him a sweet grin. "Orange juice with blood." Izuku nods, pulling a glass out and pouring orange juice inside it. Then he grabs a clean knife and nicks his wrist and holds it over the glass. A few drops of blood come out, but then a cool sensation spreads through his hand, making him pause. Confused, he looks down to see the cut he just made completely healed, the only evidence of injury a thin white line. Did someone use their quirk on me yesterday? But he didn't bump into anybody, and he didn't make eye contact with anybody either. Was there another type of activation requirement he could have met on accident? What had happened out of the ordinary the past few days? Well, there was that weird dream thing. "Kurogyari, does your sensei have a long-distance healing quirk?" Kurogyari pauses his stirring of the pot and looks over at Izuku, who's staring at his wrist with unusual intensity. "I do not think so." One for all buzzed under his skin, as if to reaffirm his sneaking suspicion. What is going on? Is one for all mutating? Why now, of all times? Lips pursed, he nicks his wrist again, watching blood roll down his wrist before the skin starts stitching itself together at lightning speed. Eyes wide, he stares at the drop of blood as it splashes into the cup of orange juice. Okay, this is going to be a problem for future Izuku. Not now Izuku. He really doesn't want to think about the implications of having a healing aspect of one for all, or how the timing being weirdly similar to the dream where he's pretty sure he died. Sighing, he sets the knife into the sink and rinses off his hands before setting the glass in front of Toga, who watches him curiously. "What language was that?" "What? You were just muttering weird words. What language was that? It sounds pretty." Izuku freezes. "What the F dash?" He opens his mouth, then closes it and turns around. This problem is for future Izuku. He will not be dealing with his weird but quirk this early in the morning, especially not with an empty stomach. He will not think about it, repress it and pretend it never happened. One for all buzzes again, and he wonders if it's laughing at his misfortune. It probably is. Pass the salt. F you. Izuku sips his tea, watching Dabi and Shigaraki go at it over breakfast. Mr. Compress has lost the mask, revealing a fine-boned face with chocolate brown eyes and short, fluffy, almost curly hair. "Is there something on my face?" He shoots Izuku an amused smile, and the green-haired boy blinks. "No, I just didn't expect your hair to look like that." Izuku pauses. His voice sounds that weird. Mr. Compress blinks, looking confused. "Is that French? What the F dash?" A sense of despair washes over him. He'd hoped one for all wouldn't extend its bullshit to the breakfast table, but it's obvious the quirk's only goal is to make his life hell. Miserably, he pushes his plate aside and drops his head onto the table, attempting to postpone his oncoming mental breakdown. "What is going on? Are you feeling okay, Bush?" Magna asks. "Absolutely not. I have a 200-year-old hell quirk intent on making my life miserable." He just nods and drinks his orange juice, deciding to not speak for the rest of the morning. Izuku drapes across the beanbag, nursing his headache. It had gotten worse since breakfast, since he's trying to pretend that one for all isn't intent on FNG with him, not to mention his alcohol consumption last night. Usually he doesn't chug. Alcohol's smaller amounts worked well as painkillers, and it was easier to hide how regularly he drank than how many pills he had to take. Plus, he hadn't drank regularly in months, but he'd gotten carried away and drank a little too much. So now he has a mild hangover. Kurogyari shooed him out of the kitchen after breakfast, and the rest of League are nowhere to be found, so he's alone. Sighing, he flops over, ignoring his pounding head in favor of staring at the ceiling. "I need to go back." He frowns. He really doesn't want to go back. But he needs to have at least 2 years of hero school under his belt to get a provisional license, and once he'd completed enough missions, he could get his actual hero license. Until then, he'd need to attend UA semi-regularly. Some part of him screamed in protest at that. He's comfortable where he is. There's no one here to remind him of his endless responsibilities, no all might, no competition pushed too far, and no dealing with people's ignorant worldviews in silence. Because every time he tried to speak up, he could feel Bakugu's glare burning into him, as if the blonde was saying, "Don't defend them, you're better than them. You're one of us now, act like it." It makes him sick. But he doesn't say anything, just buries the experience deep in his mind for when he can reflect on it when he's in a safe place. Like the bar. Over the past few months, it had become a haven for him, a place to hide from his classmates' naive outlooks on life, from his teacher's stares, from All Might's expectations, and from his mother's quiet relief and borderline neglectful behavior since he'd gotten a quirk. It made him feel warm and happy to see Kurogiri polishing glasses with a rag, or Spinner and Shigaraki playing video games, or Twice, Magna, and Toga having a spa night, or even Dabi and Mr. Compress sulking around like the loners they are. But he knows he has to go back. Time is and will always be an issue. Most likely he'd have to limit visits and have his phone lines tapped. He'll need to get his hands on a burner phone and delete incriminating data off of his current phone. As for his disappearance, he doesn't have to say anything. He can always pretend to be too traumatized to talk. But would that make the security measures worse? The opening and closing of a door and the smell of ash indicates that Dabi is back. The faint undercurrent of blood and burned flesh makes Izuku's stomach curl, and instantly, his thoughts are tossed aside in favor of shooting up, hurrying over to Dabi and noticing the blood ticking down his chin, a telltale sign of ripped stitches. But that's not what Dabi is hiding. His body is angled so Izuku can't see his right arm, which makes him frown. "Dabi, where did you get hurt?" "I'm not hurt." The burned man huffs. "I'm fine, Mom. The kids just got a little rough today, nothing too bad." He chuckles, trying to downplay the brand new gash on his leg. "Oh, honey, you shouldn't be playing with them. You know they don't know how to control their quirks yet, and Katsuki might burn you again. I'll call up the school and ask them to have you sit out recess." His heart sinks. This isn't what he wants. He wants Mom to comfort him and help patch him up. But if him sitting out recess makes her happier. "Dabi, show me your arm." Izuku's expression is carefully blank as he grabs the burned man's wrist, careful to avoid the staples that circle his wrists like cuffs. Dabi freezes, a shudder going through his body at the commanding note in the green-haired boy's voice. "Geez, Pipsqueak, it's not even that bad, see? I'm fine." He's yanked forwards, and Izuku examines the man's arm. There are pockmarks on his clothes and skin, and a faint sizzling sound comes from the skin. Acid. Acid wounds needed to be cleaned out so they didn't cause more damage, so he'd need baking soda and cloth. "Not that bad, my butt. Come on. How is the search for young Midoriya going? Any leads?" Yagi asks, his All Might form retired for the day after teaching a joint heroics class with Aizawa, who had to cover for him disappearing halfway through the lesson, much to the other man's annoyance. "No, Tashinori. There's nothing yet. It's like he disappeared into thin air." His oldest friend, Naomasa Tsukachi says, sounding somewhat exasperated. Of course, he had every right to be. Midoriya had been gone for 3 days now, and there were no clues as to where he might have been going besides a missing notebook, backpack, and a change of clothes. It wasn't like the boy to just disappear, but the police almost completely ruled out kidnapping due to the lack of struggle, and since the last person who talked to him was Yagi, his friend had questioned him. Nothing about his last conversation with his successor struck him as odd, although he was somewhat concerned when Midoriya ran out after he revealed he was quirkless. He never thought the boy would just disappear. "Do you think someone will try to find him if I raise the reward money?" The line is quiet for a moment, and Yagi fiddles with his shirt nervously. Everything about Midoriya's disappearance felt wrong. But he had limited time in his All Might form, and had no influence in his true form. "It is possible." Tsukachi conceded, though he sounded somewhat reluctant. "I'll do that. Please, call me if you find anything." "Of course." You have a tattoo? Izuku raises his eyebrows as he rinses the baking soda off of Dabi's arm. He'd taken off his shirt and coat to give Izuku better access to the injured site, and he'd spotted a swirl of ink of Dabi's hip. Yeah, I did it myself. Dabi sounds proud. It's interesting to see the burned man display any sort of emotion besides his eternal smugness. Can I see? Dabi shrugs and pulls down his waistband a little, revealing a tattoo right above his hip. It's of a snake eating its own tail, done in perfect detail despite the prominent hip bone raising the surface of Dabi's. Wow, that's so detailed. Does it have any sort of symbolism? You did an amazing job. Did it hurt? Izuku leans in, admiring the clear, strong lines that make up the scales of the snake. Thanks. It didn't really hurt, and it does have symbolism. I like tattoos because they help erase my scars, or at least make them prettier. Dabi shoots Izuku a dry smile, and the green-haired boy blinks, but Dabi is already talking again. I still have the stuff I used to tattoo myself in my room, and they aren't too rusty yet. Izuku blinks again, the realization of what was being offered dawning on him. Hesitantly, he looks down at his scarred arms, now on display because he'd forgotten a compression shirt and it's too warm for a hoodie, eyes focusing on the particularly large starburst burn on his left arm. Hiding them or making them prettier. He mostly hid them for other people. He doesn't really care about how they look or how many there are. They represent him being alive, despite the world being against him. But he'd have to go back to UA eventually. And he'd have to start hiding them again. And while that might not be fun, maybe he could take a piece of the league back with him. To comfort him whenever everything got to be too much and he couldn't reach them. I think I'll take you up on that offer. Izuku smiles, then turns back to the man's arm. Only after you're healed up, though. Dabi snorts, but agrees, and the rest of the time in the bathroom is spent in comfortable silence. Izuku Midoriya, one of the students in his first-year class that was a part of the USJ attack at the beginning of the year. To be honest, Aizawa wasn't expecting much from the boy. On his first day, he scraped through the quirk apprehension test by the skin of his teeth. The only reason he didn't expel the kid is because of the glint of determination in his eye. A determination that echoed with his younger self. He didn't, and still doesn't, understand. How could someone with such a powerful enhancer quirk act so fearful? How could he stutter and second-guess his every move? Usually, kids with powerful quirks were confident and reassured, like Bakugo or Todoroki. Instead, Midoriya seemed almost fearful around his peers, and looked downright terrified whenever Aizawa singles him out. Still, he'd clearly started bonding with his classmates after the USJ, trauma does that to people, and the sports festival. Hell, he even won the ever-stoic Todoroki over on his side. And now he's gone. Disappeared after running off of campus in the middle of a school day. The last person he talked to was that blonde idiot, who refused to explain what exactly he said to Midoriya that would make him run off of campus. Aizawa had known Midoriya for less than a year, and even he thinks something is wrong. The green-haired boy had perfect attendance records, and he's one of the best-behaved students the Erasure hero has ever taught. When Izuku hadn't shown up to class for a day, there were mixed responses, the most obvious one from Bakugo, who seemed to sense something was wrong. After a week of Midoriya not attending class, he'd given in and told 1A that their classmate was missing. It had led to some interesting reactions. Most of the class seemed worried, but were hopeful for him to be found. Some came up to him and asked him if there was any villain involvement, specifically from the League of Villains. He didn't really have an answer for that, but he comforted them as best as he could. Bakugo seemed tenser than usual, despite his friends attempting to distract him. As expected, Midoriya's closest friends Uraraka, Ida, and Todoroki had the most severe reactions. Uraraka practically threw herself into training, and Ida was unusually quiet the more days passed. Todoroki reverted back to his cold silence from the beginning of the year, punctuated by glares at Bakugo and long stares at All Might during training. As the week progressed, Aizawa started to notice the shifting power dynamics in class and the increasingly empty desk space behind Bakugo. Class 1A grew quieter, more pensive, and more looks were shot at said desk. Training felt odd, and he started overhearing students quietly admitting to worry for the green-haired boy. Midoriya's absence left a large power vacuum in the class, and no one was quite sure how to deal with it. He was the shy, overly apologetic heavy hitter who loved to write in notebooks. He balanced out the overall mood with his endless determination and his mumble storms, one of which Aizawa had the opportunity to listen to, though the boy cut himself off as soon as he spotted him, were actually extremely insightful. Unfortunately, Nizu had decided to keep Midoriya's disappearance under wraps from the public, and though the rat is covertly funding the search, Aizawa can tell the principal isn't very invested in finding the kid. Probably because he wants to avoid more bad press. Everything about this situation screamed that something is wrong, but Aizawa can't join the case because he's too emotionally invested. So he's stuck dealing with his class and trying to gain insight from the outside. What a clusterfuck. What are we doing here? Izuku asks, looking around the mostly empty warehouse with confusion. He thought he and Twice going out to get groceries, until he was dragged into the main bar and hassled through a warp gate. Some NPC wants to talk to us, and Sensei said he was doing something to the bar tonight, so we brought you along. I should have run as soon as I saw all of them in the same room without arguing. Izuku sighs, but pulls up his hoodie and clambers up the dusty crates, sending plumes of dust motes swirling in the moonlight. He positions himself in between Dabi and Twice, both of whom are much larger and more eye-catching than him. Hopefully, that will keep him from being acknowledged. His missing poster had been up for a while now, and between that and the sports festival, he's bound to get recognized at some point. I can't believe it's almost been 2 weeks since I ran away. It's oddly comforting. The League, despite being criminals, make him feel safer than the entirety of UA. Plus, he'd been able to get at least 6 hours of sleep every night since his weird dream, and he even had people to cuddle with. That was nice. Though, it was pretty embarrassing to wake up on top of Kurogiri, especially since he can't read that man for the life of him. Footsteps echo through the quiet warehouse, silencing murmurs of the League. A man in a red and gold plague mask steps into the moonlight, green coat trimmed by purple feathers. Though, it's the familiar white surgical gloves on his hands that catch Izuku's eye. He knows this guy. He never got a name, but the man followed him around for a solid 2 months, trying to get him to join a cult by healing his daily injuries, which was odd, since he clearly had germophobia and didn't like blood. None of his classmates were particularly happy about his new friend's quirk, and made it their mission to injure him so badly that the man couldn't heal him. He'd ended up having his eye half gouged out, and the man had healed him and left shortly after that. Beatings were less brutal afterwards, probably because they were afraid they'd killed him, but the verbal bullying abounded. It was around this time he received his first spider lily. Overall, the man was terrible at kidnapping, but had an interesting enough quirk that Izuku remembered attempting to analyze it. Though he never got up the courage to ask the man about it, his anxiety was at an all-time high and he was practically mute. As the conversation carries on, he notices the man's tense posture, and how his body was squarely to the shadowy wall of the warehouse. He peers at the wall, noting a faint tremor that would go through the wall every time Shigaraki said something offensive. So he has backup. The question is it a camouflage quirk, or something else? Probably also how many people are actually here too, but he's more interested in the quirk than anything else. You would do well to listen to me. That old man is wasting time on you lot. Allow a newer, better organization to arise. If he funded me, I could bring about a new age to Japan. Surely he remembers the glorious days when quirks were nothing but fantasy? Doesn't he want that again? A truly neutral society, where anyone can choose any career path without silly things like quirks getting in the way. Izuku blinks. A society without quirks was not all this guy is making it out to be. Sure, quirk discrimination wasn't an issue, but other types of prejudice ran rampant, and some countries, namely America, were on the brink of civil war because of said prejudices. Honestly, Izuku thinks they've just traded out one prominent issue for another in the past 200 years. Especially when it came to the treatment of the quirked and quirkless. Violent riots and human experimentation ran rampant in Japan during the reveal of quirks as a whole, and it wasn't uncommon for entire families to be wiped out overnight. Now, the quirkless are pushed to the edge of society and beaten down constantly. There are even some purist groups that raid hospitals for quirk records and wipe out anyone with quirkless on their files. Even though the 20% statistic is bullshit, since those without toe joints that display no sign of a quirk by 8 are marked quirkless. There are actually very few people with the toe joint worldwide, and almost none in Japan. Hey, don't talk about the league like that, you be. Magna charges at the man, magnet swinging. His quirk. He opens his mouth to call out, but he can tell it's going to be too late. Time slows, and he sees the man pulling off a glove with narrowed eyes. Green lightning crackles off of his body as he grabs a katana off of Spinner's back and throws it in between the two villains, making them both jump back. A spiderweb of cracks spreads from the katana now halfway buried in the cement floor. He has a quirk centered in his hands that could rearrange your molecules in seconds. Don't let him touch you. Magna pales, then looks from him to the man she almost charged and back to him. Thanks, Bush. She sighs and retreats, settling back onto her crate. Unfortunately, Cult Guy's focus is now on him. This isn't going to go well. Who are you? No one looks very relaxed anymore. Cult Guy seems to have hit the limit of his patience for the night, and Izuku really doesn't want to see his backup up close and personal. He's pretty sure the guy said something about the Yakuza too, who were known for their liberal usage of guns during the riots at the dawn of quirks. Being shot is not on his agenda for tonight. Deciding to be polite and get everyone out of here as fast as possible fighting in enclosed spaces isn't the strong suit of the heavy hitters of the league, and Kurogiri isn't going to pick them up for another 20 minutes. He hops down the boxes, strolling up to the katana with forced ease. I'm the kid you stalked for 2 months. Thanks for fixing me up before you left. I would have gotten a lot of shit for missing an eye back in middle school. Damn it. That was not what was supposed to come out of his mouth, but staying with the league has been chipping away at his brain-to-mouth filter. Please don't let me die because I sassed a villain. The man's golden eyes narrow, and he glares at Izuku. You aren't him. He was pure. Quirkless. You have a quirk. Well, that made him more upset. I'm going to have to reveal my face, aren't I? Brat, get away from him. Shigaraki commands, but Izuku doesn't move, contemplating being recognized and being returned to the police for the hefty finder's fee on his head. God, does he hate that? It makes him feel like a FING dog or someone dying tonight. Human life should always be a hero's first priority. Frowning, he pulls off his hood and crosses his arms. Yeah, about that quirkless thing. How did you figure it out? Besides the bullying. Because it would be creepy if you looked through my hospital records. You didn't do that, did you? Did you do that to other quirkless kids? Listen, offering them a place in your cult really isn't merciful. They probably thought we're one of those doctors that like to use quirkless people like a human version of Operation for Funsies. I was trying to help. And I do appreciate your help, but what are your sources? You said taking away quirks would make the world better. A world without quirks is definitely different, but if you want to use the discrimination angle, you have to take into account the other types of discrimination people in a world without quirks faced. Did you know that America was on the verge of civil war before quirks started appearing? There were people rioting for basic human rights because they preferred sleeping with someone of the same gender, or because their skin was dark, or because they were born a woman, or because we're considered different from normal and persecuted for it. Don't you think that's kind of similar to mutation quirk discrimination protests? What about how the only socially accepted type of different are people with pretty mutation quirks like Hawks and Maruko? They're the most favored heroes with mutation quirks because their quirks are eye-pleasing. What about people with quirks that make living a normal life difficult? It's kind of similar to people with disabilities or mental health issues, isn't it? Not to say that these issues have completely disappeared, they've just been overshadowed by quirks. Cult Guy looks frustrated. But you're quirkless. Shouldn't you agree with me? I saw you get bullied every day because of something completely out of your control. Doesn't that make you angry? Don't you hate quirks? Don't you want the world to go back to the way it was? He demands. But what an inspiring counterargument. Oh, definitely. Look, I would have appreciated being treated with basic human decency when I was quirkless, but that doesn't mean I hate quirks. What I hate is that society pushes people into boxes because of their quirks and drills propaganda about weak quirks into everyone's heads from a young age. But it's not really quirks or people to blame, it's the system. If you really want to have some influence over what happens with quirks and the quirkless, why don't you become a politician? Being a villain will only land you in jail, and everything you worked for will be overshadowed by your bad deeds. The man stared down at him, his plague mask's gold stitching glinting in the moonlight. That you've changed a lot, haven't you? His tone is resigned, but Izuku doesn't sense any hostility, so he decides to keep talking. By his best guess, their warp gate will be here in 5 minutes or so. But the one thing that hasn't changed is my past experiences. I may have a quirk now, but that doesn't mean I'll stop being quirkless in here. He taps his head. Or here. He taps his chest. I'm going to use this quirk and the privilege that comes with it to change society and inspire others. You were born privileged. But you aren't using that privilege correctly. He reaches forwards, yanking the sword out of the cracked ground, keeping an eye on the wall behind Cult Guy. It's still enough that Izuku almost believes it's a normal wall. Please consider my words before continuing down your path. He bows neatly, then turns to Shigaraki, who looks so confused that Izuku feels bad for him. Let's go, our ride is waiting for us. Slowly, the League starts climbing down the crates, and he idly twirls the chipped katana, keeping an eye on Cult Guy, who seems to be deep in thought. As they exit the warehouse, Spinner snatches the weapon from his hands and glares at him, cradling the weapon like a child. Did you have to take one of my good katanas? Sorry, Spinner. Izuku smiles apologetically. Forget that, did you seriously just try to talk Overhaul out of villainy? Holy shit, that was badass. Twice cheers, pumping his fists. His name is Overhaul? The green-haired boy asks. How you guys even know each other? And why did he think you were quirkless? Toga asks curiously. What was that part one heard about stalking and you not having an eye? Dabi asks, sounding ready to charge back into the warehouse and fight Overhaul. You were bullied? Shigaraki asks, red eyes narrowed behind his hand. The full set had made an appearance tonight, and the get-up reminded him of the USJ field trip. Surprisingly, it wasn't the worst one he's ever been on. Well, I was quirkless most of my life. Izuku starts to explain, then pulls up short. How to explain a transferable quirk and being injured regularly for a decade. I was bullied a lot. Quirkless discrimination is at an all-time high in Japan, even though a lot of people diagnosed quirkless aren't actually quirkless, they just have dormant quirks. They're sort of written off. They have a lot of trouble getting jobs, and most die before high school ends. The older generation has been dying out faster because quirkless people are rejected from hospitals, or the fees are raised a lot because the machines can't handle them. He decides to ignore the darkening mood around him, keeping his pace a couple steps ahead of the group and keeping his tone light. Overhaul found me in my first year of middle school and started using his quirk to heal me. My classmates noticed and took it as an invitation to get rougher. I ended up having my eye halfway gouged out before they got squeamish and left. Overhaul came and healed me again, and that was the last time I saw him. I think he realized that I wasn't going to join his cult and that his presence was making things worse for me. The good news is that the kids that ganged up on me thought they killed me, so things shifted to suicide baiting, which was nice. Izuku pauses, clears his throat, then decides to finish this up. He can see Kurojire's mist in the distance. As for my quirk, it's completely different from my family's, and it had special activation requirements. One was meeting my idol, which wasn't pleasant. I nearly suffocated a few minutes before, and he told me to give up on my dream to be a quirkless hero and be a police officer on a rooftop, then left. My quirk activated 10 months later because I also needed muscle mass for it to be usable without it blowing my arms or legs off. Bone breaking was apparently the best I could hope for. I've been figuring out how to use it alone since I got it, since the only person I know with a quirk similar to mine and never had the same problems I do. But I'm alive now, and I don't break my bones anymore, so I'd say everything turned out okay. He finishes the summary of his life with a shrug as he reaches Kurojire's portal. It's deathly silent. Thousands of questions and doubts run through his mind, but just before he starts to spiral, Shigaraki speaks up. How the F, aren't you a villain yet? Izuku laughs dryly, some of his tension draining away. The others seem to relax as he turns to face them, though he notices they still wear dark expressions. That depends on your definition of villainy, Shigaraki. He shrugs, carefully watching Dabi, who seems the angriest at the moment. The others are better at hiding their anger, but he looks ready to explode. Where were your parents? Dabi grits out. I should have expected that. Dad ran for the hills as soon as I was diagnosed. Mom didn't hit me or kick me out. That's the best I could have asked for as a quirkless kid. The entire league grimaces at that, and Izuku flinches, realizing that he'd basically just trauma dumped them. I'm sorry. That was really out of the blue, and I must have made you all uncomfortable. Absolutely not. Mr. Compress appeared in front of him, resting a gloved hand on his shoulder. We asked about it and you told us. There was nothing wrong with that, and you didn't make any of us uncomfortable, right? A chorus of "is" makes Izuku jump a little, but he quickly relaxes. That's so you don't hate me because I was quirkless? He whispers, twisting his hands together nervously. I could never hate you, Izuku. You're too nice. Toga wails, pushing Compress out of the way and wrapping her arms around him tightly. He blinks, surprised, but hugs her back, looking to the rest of the league. Magna smiles at him, looking a little teary. Of course not, Bush. You're a good person with or without a quirk. And just like that, the dam breaks. Izuku's face crumples, and he bursts into tears, silent sobs making his body shudder as he held Toga like a lifeline because someone cared. Someone cared that he'd been through hell and back, someone acknowledged that what happened was wrong. And if it was a villain? Well, Izuku has never seen the world in black and white. As long as they accepted him, he didn't care what society labeled them as. As Mr. Compress carried the limp Izuku through the portal, he'd passed out after silently crying his eyes out and holding Toga like a teddy bear for 15 minutes, which was, honestly, heart-wrenching to watch. Shigaraki followed close behind, cold rage settling in his bones like lead. Dabi felt similarly, and every single one of his footsteps seemed to be fueled by barely controlled rage. Magna and Spinner had been wearing matching grim expressions since the kid started crying, and Twice was uncharacteristically silent. Himiko has been radiating silent rage since the boy had been removed from her arms, and her usual smile was replaced by her "I'm about to shank someone" violently frown. Kurogiri seemed to sense their moods, and his glowing eyes narrow when he spots Izuku unconscious in Mr. Compress' arms. Do we need to wipe out that Yakuza group? Shigaraki's hand ghosts his healed-over neck, but he quickly stops, remembering all of the effort Izuku put in to help him stop the self-destructive habit. Does he have self-destructive habits too? Letting out a huff, he slips the red artist's gloves onto his hands before he impulsively dusts something. Mr. Compress carefully sets Izuku on the couch, then turns to face the rest of the league members, expression unreadable due to his black and white mask. I want to wrap him in bubble wrap and hide him away from the world forever. Twice announces, frown clear despite his mask. No, let's murder everyone who ever hurt him. I don't think he'd appreciate that very much. Dabi says dryly, looking over at the still form on the couch. He just said all of that so casually. Like it was normal for. Spinner's voice cracks, and he holds his broken sword tightly. I mean I was but not like that. How is he even alive? I feel like I'm missing something. Kurogiri says, sounding confused. Zuka has a lot of different scars. How many different people do you think it was? Toga asks, fingering the edge of her knife almost lovingly. The entire group save Kurogiri seems to darken at this. Something is definitely going on with his mom too. Some of those scars are at least 8 years old, there's no way she couldn't have noticed that sheet. Dabi spits out, fists clenched as he looks over at Izuku. No wonder he was so nice to us. He probably saw people like him and treated us the way he wanted to be treated for years. Magna sniffs, hand tight on her magnet. Tamura, could you please explain what everyone is upset about? And why Izuku is asleep? Kurogiri, picking up on the overall mood, is more somber now. Shigaraki tenses at the direct questions, jaw tensing as he looks over at Izuku, who's curling into himself in a way that makes Shigaraki itch, because he remembers curling up like that when he was younger, when he slept on cold concrete, before Sensei and Kurogiri. Izuku told us some stuff about his childhood. Shigaraki leaves it at that. Then he grabs a blanket and sits down on the couch, draping the material over Izuku gently. Somehow, the rest of the league weasels their way into the small corner with the couch and beanbag and TV, each occupying a space close to Izuku. They didn't want to leave him alone. Not after hearing his story, not after seeing him break down over a few kind words. Because they'd felt the same at some point in their lives, and they didn't want the boy to have to face things alone like they did. Like he probably had been for years. So they all piled up in the small space, with Shigaraki, Dabi, and Spinner on the couch, while Magna and Twice rested their backs against the couch and Mr. Compress settled on the beanbag with Toga curled up against his side. Izuku wakes up with one arm around Dabi's waist, one hand brushing Magna's shoulder, his entire upper body on Shigaraki's lap, and his legs on Spinner. He's confused for a minute, then all of last night comes flooding back to him, and he tenses. A hand ruffles his hair, making him jump. Chill, Pipsqueak. We're all here. Dabi's voice is unusually soft, and Izuku flushes with embarrassment at the thought of everyone here just because of him. He's awake. Shigaraki asks, voice raspy from sleep. Omega didja stole theme everything decried and the probabilitinkim stupidandecree baby. Hey, it's okay. We're here and we're not leaving. Dabi says, making Izuku's chest tighten. Really? He whispers, so quiet it might have been missed if they hadn't been listening so closely. Nope. You're stuck with us now. Shigaraki announces, his voice loud enough to start waking up the rest of the league. We're kind of like strays. You give us a little affection and attention, and bam! You have permanent a-hole friends. Dabi chuckles wryly, his turquoise eyes sad as he watches the boy unconsciously relax. Indeed. No one here will blame you for something out of your control. Mr. Compress speaks up, and Izuku twists his head to see him situated on the beanbag with Toga draped across his lap. They don't hate me. They're going to stay. That's enough to make Izuku burst into tears again, and the rest of the league immediately start panicking. Sheet. Did we say something wrong? Who made him cry? Izuku, don't cry. They're happy to tears. Don't worry. Izuku sobs, a smile spreading across his face. It wasn't particularly large or bright. It wasn't anything like his usual smiles. It was a smile that had been shattered and taped back together again. But it was more genuine than any of his fake ones could ever be. They're going to stay. Things proceeded pretty much normally after that, though the league got a lot more touchy with him. Hair ruffles, impromptu hugs, cuddles, leaning on him, even occasional hand-holding. It was nice. One day, while he and Dabi are putting the final touches on the drawing of the tattoo sleeve Izuku asked for, he tried to give Dabi complete creative freedom, but the man insisted on him at least looking over the final drawing before putting it on his skin. He hears muffled shouting from down the hall. Curious, he stands up and peeks through Dabi's door. A blur of motion and someone screeching makes him flinch back. I'm almost at a save point, let me finish. A portal opens in the middle of the hall, and the blur he assumes is Shigaraki disappears. Izuku closes the door. What do you think? Izuku stares at the large sheet of paper in awe, a smile creeping onto his face when he realizes that Dabi incorporated little pieces of each of the league members into there. It's perfect. Surprisingly, the tattoo doesn't hurt. Actually, the buzzing of the needle is almost soothing, and he dozes through most of the inking process. When Dabi taps him and tells him that they're taking a break for the night, he nods sleepily and pulls a hoodie over his saran-wrapped arm. He's decided to hide it, from himself and others, until the process is done. Typically, full sleeves take at least 7 months to a year due to healing process, but Izuku had told Dabi his quirk had a mild healing aspect to it, and they decided to check the tattoo in the morning. If there wasn't any pain, they'd continue, and if there was pain, they'd check every day until it healed. Izuku falls asleep curled against Twice, but wakes up early due to excitement. He slips out of bed quickly and pokes at his arm. Despite the healing aspect of One for All being largely ignored, for the sake of his own sanity, he thinks that it should work to heal the irritated skin quickly. When he feels no pain, he grins. This part of One for All might not be that bad. One for All buzzes, and he slips into a stern frown. That doesn't mean you get free reign of my body. The buzz spikes, and Izuku nods, satisfied the quirk understood him. In reality, that was only wishful thinking on Izuku's part. Has anyone seen Zuku? He's been gone all of yesterday and today. Toga bursts into the bar, a pout on her face. Shigaraki grunts, hunched over his console, still disgruntled by his forced shower yesterday. He'd seen his life flash before his eyes when Kurogiri slammed the door open after he'd told the blue-haired man to shower and clean his room for the 4th time in 2 hours. He had attempted to sprint away with his console, but it was fruitless. Warpers are not to be messed with. Oh, he was with me last night. That little sheet hogged my bed. Twice calls from the open window, a lit cigarette dangling from his lips. Magna swirls her bright red drink. She almost never was without one in the bar area, a silent, thank you, for wrangling Toga when she became difficult from Kurogiri, thoughtfully. Now that I think about it, Dabi's been gone too. That BSTRDPC is always slinking off to random but places. He acts like it's some kind of secret quest. Shigaraki rolls his eyes, pressing the red button particularly hard as he wipes out a horde of zombies. On screen. I'm sure he'll turn up, Sugar. Why don't you go talk to Spinner about places to buy new knives? I heard he knows where to find the best kinds. And just like that, Toga's gone, the door slamming shut behind her as she sprints for Spinner's room. The poor man would spend the next 3 hours being harassed by Toga about knives and nearly get his hand cut off when he tried to borrow one of her knives to test the quality. Wow! Izuku stares down at his pinkish skin, now decorated with intricate whirls of ink as Dabi starts putting away his tattoo kit. It was one thing to see the design on paper, but another to see it on his own skin. The black ink was occasionally accented by red, and it encompasses his entire left arm. Shapes and symbols that remind him of the League are interspersed with whirls of black ink, making it like a game to find them. Spiderweb cracks in the shape of a hand on his bicep, Spinner's tattered scarf twisting around his elbow, a mask split in half for Twice forearm, an elegant silhouette of a misty cat for Kurogiri, a marble transforming into a skewered card for Mr. Compress and Toga on his inner arm, a dragon with an open maw curled around his wrist for Dabi, and Greek symbols for Magna, who, he discovered, loved Greek mythology and knew almost every story and would tell him if prompted. Wow! He breathes, eyes softening as he gently traces the tender skin, awed by how cohesive Dabi managed to make each symbol despite their differences. You look pretty much healed up now, but you should let the bandage sit for another day before showing it off, okay? Dabi instructs, gently poking him in the head. Izuku blinks and looks up at the burned man with a megawatt smile that nearly blinds him. Thank you so much. He embraces Dabi's midsection tightly, careful to avoid the area where he knows the burned man's chest burns are. No problem, Pipsqueak. Just don't go blabbing about my secret power, okay? Okay. Yawning widely, Izuku stretches and then delicately pokes at his arm. When no pain comes, he unwraps the bandages, which are slightly wet from excess ink leaking from his skin, and rinses off his arm, admiring the tattoo. It's so cool. Smiling, he pulls on a borrowed tank top and clips his curly bangs up with one of Toga's hair clips, then strolls through the hallway, knowing no one but Kurogiri is awake right now. Usually, the Misty Man is making breakfast at this time, so he decides to head over and help out. He had been occupied with the tattoo for the past 2 days, and he felt kind of bad for leaving Kurogiri alone like that. The floorboards creak under his feet as he approaches the kitchen and peeks through the doorway. Inside, the warper is hovering over 2 pans, but seems to sense him and whips around. Gio, it's you. Could you dice some mushrooms for me? I think something chipped one of my good pots. Izuku nods, and the Misty Man turns back to his pots as he washes his hands and starts methodically dicing the large pile of mushrooms on the cutting board. Also, Kurogiri stops talking. The green-haired boy turns around, noting Kurogiri flickering violently, his mist turning a shade of lighter violet as his slitted, glowing eyes focus on Izuku. Or, rather, the tattoo on his left arm. He'd never seen this kind of reaction from Kurogyari before, so he freezes, waiting for the warper to make the first move. Eventually, Kurogyari lets out a long-suffering sigh and puts his head in his hands for a solid minute. Then he looks up, sighs again, returns to his normal shade of purple. I'm not going to ask. Please just peel and cut up this ginger, and try not to get someone killed this early in the morning. Izuku blinks. Who am I getting killed? He decides not to question it and nods, taking the ginger from Kurogyari's misty hands. Oi, Kurogyari, do you have any apple juice? Shigaraki trails off when he sees Izuku. Or, more accurately, Izuku's left arm. He blue screens. Shigaraki, why are you standing in the doorway like that? It's rather rude. Mr. Compress is the next to enter, his suit already neatly pressed and sleeves rolled up. He steps around from Shigaraki with fluid ease, then looks to the kitchen, where his favorite other adult in the league is making food, along with Izuku. Though, something seems off. Mr. Compress peers at the scene a little closer. He freezes when he spots the swirls of ink on the green-haired boy's arm, wondering if his ever-sharp eyes had deceived him. He decides that he needs to sit down. Magna is next, and she takes one look at Izuku's arm, smiles, and sits down beside Mr. Compress. Toga comes in, zeroes in on Izuku, squeals, lunges at the kitchen, and nearly gets cut in half by one of Kurogyari's portals warping her into a seat at the table. That doesn't stop her from calling out her usual order of orange juice with blood, and when Izuku walks over, she grabs his tattooed arm and stares at it intensely with a huge grin on her face. Do you like it? She looks up, her grin growing even wider. Yeah. It makes me want to bite you more. Thank you. He grins, then flips his arm over and points at the knife on the inside of his arm. That one's for you. What do you think? It's so pretty. There's even red flowers around it. So cool. She cheers, poking at his arm. It's at that moment Spinner and Twice walk in at the same time, chatting about ideal pillow temperature. They both notice Shigaraki, step around him, then sit down at the table. Whoa. When did that get there? You look badass. That's really cool. The artist did a good job. Spinner examines it for another minute, a contemplative look on his face. Is that my scarf? Izuku flushes and clears his throat awkwardly, pulling his arm out of Toga's grasp. Yes. Shigaraki snaps out of whatever plane of existence he was in for 30 minutes and points at Izuku wordlessly, mouth opening, then closing. The green-haired boy tilts his head, looking at Shigaraki's finger for a minute before understanding dawns on his face. Oh, this one's for you. He taps his bicep, avoiding eye contact with the man. Shigaraki makes a noise somewhere between a choking cat and a duck, then sits down. Dabi is the last to enter, and he slinks in quickly, taking a seat at the table as the food is served. As they start eating, Magna sends Izuku a wink, and Dabi has a smug glint in his eye as he watches Shigaraki stare down at his plate blankly before slowly starting to eat. That's so who offered to tattoo a minor without parental consent? Mr. Compress asks, fingers twirling his fork. Green eyes focus on him, and the boy sends the villain a knowing look. Since when did you care about silly things like the law? Twice chokes. Fair enough. It's tasteful, and it was obviously done by someone who knew what they were doing. Izuku smiles shyly, then takes a sip of his juice. If only you knew. He and Dabi make eye contact, and he smiles into his cup, eyes drifting to Shigaraki, who seems to be slowly coming out of existential crisis mode. Wait, this is fine. Fine. He mouths to himself, and Izuku's lips twitch at the stream of silent words Shigaraki mouths to himself. I think that went over pretty well.